doing it. Hey, and there's my introduction. It went really, really quick. With me tonight is James again, Wigginton. So you guys are going to have a ball here. And, I never had the opportunity to discuss with him personally, to share with you guys out there, my audience, about his encounter with Bigfoot. So we're going to start a little bit with that, and then we're going to go into the deep side of the military industrial complex, intelligence, and special project programs. And I think it'll be enlightening, the discussion. We talked a little bit in the green room this afternoon, actually by phone. And you can't get off the phone with this guy, not because of him. It's because the conversations are just mind blowing, and the facts are so unreal. You guys are just going to love it. You're going to have to sit back and take a minute and just love it and suck it all in. If anybody comes on tonight and you want to share it to any of your groups, please feel free to do so. And all the admins who always allow us to come into the groups, let us in, let us in. And thank you for always doing that. We really appreciate it. But as I said, it's James Wigington that's with me tonight, and he has had an encounter. He's going to be in the dark. He prefers to come on and talk by phone, and we're okay with that here. We do a lot of deep dive radio scenario stuff on the Dark Radio Network project. So a lot of people have come in before and have been off to the side. So
well, you don't want me to break the TV, do you?
No, come
or
on.
The screen.
No, it's okay. It's what? It's all whatever makes the guest feel comfortable. It's fine. Or the scenario with your technology and so forth. And even me. For the amount of things that I do and the platforms, the shows, I have to learn everything a little bit at a time until I can get it down pat better. So, I just do the best I can and I move forward the way I do. So hopefully everybody gets it. Yeah.
Or relearn.
And I'm still learning when it comes to technology. I mean, it's just something I have to do. So we have a couple people starting to jump into the room. Hello to you guys all tonight. I don't know if I'll be directly looking at everybody, but I do want to welcome you all in. Please feel free again to share. And we're going to start off tonight with a Bigfoot encounter from James. And would he? I want everybody to know this. This is pretty incredible. The story is his. It's real. It's factual. And whatever he tells us is the type of information we need for data and research, and for all of us to be able to compile the information the best we can to figure out the whole 9 yards, so to speak, on the Bigfoot narrative, as well as Dogman and more. So, James, let's start off, and I want to welcome you in. You've been with me before. We had a really wonderful time. We had some great views and numbers, by the way. So that was wonderful. And tonight, let's do a little bit better because, every time a show comes on with a guest, it usually does do better, and that's all good. I wanted to bring something up to you before we go right into your Bigfoot account. I wanted to ask you if you knew anything about this because we were talking about Admiral Berg, and I think it was high jump. Was it high jump we were discussing the last time we were on?
Yeah. The first one was high jump he was on in 1946, 47.
Right. That he took several trips there. There's not a lot of talk on it, but one of the things that I had found out since the time we talked last, that his son had some information that he was going to share, and he wind up dying on his way to possibly give a different side of enlightenment of information, and we lost him. Were you aware of that?
Yeah. They found him in a warehouse.
Right.
And he was going to give a talk. Got on the train. I think it was a train, and gonna give a talk. And they found him sometime later, days later, and he was in a warehouse. Didn't have his shoes on. Disgruntled, dirty, hungry, and dead. And they never could figure out exactly what happened because he got on the train with relatives, at the station.
Right.
And, went down the train and I don't know what happened to him after that. I don't know if somebody met him or something happened to him after he departed from the train. No one knows.
Well, the one
sure ended up dead.
Yeah, right. And the one part that I found most intriguing about that was the fact that he was to do some type of lecture or or give some type of information to some type of journalist, and something, you know, beyond what we understand as normality had occurred. Just as you said, being found in a warehouse, shoes off, different scenarios like that. It's kind of like when you hear about the incident from the 16th floor. Was it with Forrestal?
Yeah, James, Secretary of the Navy.
Right. Well, no,
he was in with the Majority 12. Now, it was first called the Majority 12, then they somehow or somebody changed it to Majestic 12.
Right.
And the day he went out the window that night, and from the top floor, and he had to go through the window, literally.
Right.
And his son was supposed to come and visit him the next day.
Exactly. Day. Yeah, well, I think they were actually going to remove him.
To see him. They kept her from going visiting him.
Yeah. Yeah, when it comes...
And you talk about Admiral Byrd, he was told to keep his mouth shut.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt, I think there's enough information and common sense when you look at the information that surrounds everything. You can't come to any other type of conclusion. I can't. I mean, I just can't. And if you go into a couple other narratives, not to put this twist out there too much, Jim Morrison had family that worked in UFO projects. And
are you talking about the rock singer?
Yeah. And one of his songs, there's some hints within it called The Lizard King that I know about.
Yeah.
And he's actually talking about a scenario of truth that surrounds this whole ufology network that you and I were talking about the last time, but we didn't go exactly into it. And one of the other things that I was thinking about this afternoon after we hung up, I was trying to talk to you about what they were calling a Garthian, different, the hollow earth system, the big hole, this tunnel, no fly zone, New Schwaben. I couldn't think of what the Germans were calling it. They called it this breakaway civilization of scientists and more developed the military complex up there for new technologies. It just seemed that was the best narrative for them to hide from the rest of the world, to hide their technology however they came across it. But they called the place Base 211 New Schwaben.
Yeah, New Schwaben land.
Yeah, right, exactly. And we have some really good people that do talk about that, but we can get back to this, everybody. Thank you for joining in. I'm starting to see some people calculating. And with me tonight is James Winkington. We're going to talk a lot of narrative, deep state, military-industrial complex, special project programs, theories, hypothetical scenarios, Linda Moulton Howe, cattle mutilation, probability of theory coming directly from the man himself, James here. And I'm talking, this is a guy who's well-informed, educated, who does a lot of research. I don't want to say like myself, but I don't think I'm quite on his level. So he's going to teach us all a lot tonight. And if you can, please feel free to share. We'd appreciate it, getting us out into all your groups that you guys support into, and let them know you want to have Michael Anthony on with his guest. So James, again,
I was the only kid in the third grade that had driver's license.
And and if he fails at research, he's going to be one hell of a comedian. So, and hey, all good. I hope everybody got a charge out of that.
Beverly Hillbillies with Jethro Bodine.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, you got that kind of accent. You fit right in there with Granny and Jed.
Well, I'm Southern, so
Yeah. Well, when I hear Southern people, I always hear there's a misconception, I think, in a lot of ways. But the first thing I always thought was hospitality. Hello, ma'am. How are you, ma'am? You go into a restaurant, they're just so pleasant. The voice, all the good things. And I know that's who you are. Again, I spent almost an hour and a half with you on the last program, and I couldn't wait to get you back on. So let's deep dive the Bigfoot here. And while we're doing that, let's say hi to B. Moss. Let's say hi to Odessa. Let's say hi to Bill Rigby, Mary Fabian. And if I forgot anybody, which I know I have, there's a zillion of us out there. Jessica Jones, who's lighting the world on fire right now, coming up the ladder is with the remote viewing and some of her scenarios. So there's another one starting to climb the ladder. And I don't want to call it a ladder of success. I want to call it a ladder of information. What was
her name?
Jessica Jones.
Jessica Jones.
Yeah, she's been doing some shows recently with somebody. Every once in a while I talk to Christina Gomez, and I think she's actually I'm pretty sure she's an admin to America Disclosing, our group. So if you're a member to our group, she's right in there. She does a lot of shows with Jimmy Charge. I think even right now she's live with Jimmy. There's a real good possibility. I think they were talking about Hubble telescope and some of the new telescope and the future of what this means and what it's going to analyze and so forth. But let's get into your story real quick, if you don't mind, on this encounter with Bigfoot, because I find it really intriguing, and I never actually got to talk to you about it. So if we can spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes on it, would that be okay with you, James?
Sure.
All right, so rock us into this, because you're the only one that was there that can tell it.
Well, I was just went to look at this creek, and I wasn't Bigfooting, and I had taken the plaster cast out of my backpack and asked for permission to go down the guy's land. And I was moseying back to look at the creek, and it took me something like an hour and a half to get back in there. I can make it now a little bit faster. Of course, I know where I'm going. But I was walking there, and the creek merges into another creek. And just, maybe 20 foot from where it merged, I looked down, and I'm going down this, I guess it's an old logging road, wagon road, whatever. And on the left-hand side, I see a footprint. And it's 17 inches long, and a barefooted footprint. And I go on a little past it, maybe another 10 or 12 foot, and there's another footprint right next to a tree, right next to the creek. And it's 7 5/8 inches long, barefooted footprint. And I tried to put my foot down in indention to see, what it would take. I weigh 200 pounds, and I could hardly make a dent in it. So I'm just curious if it wasn't wet when he did that, or moist from maybe rain or something. And I was going to cast material, and looked at my backpack, and I remembered I had left the casting material in the truck. So I said, I'll come back the next morning, because it was mid-afternoon. And I have learned since then, this is a trick, the spray foam insulation. You can buy at Home Depot, Lowe's, or wherever. If you don't want to carry all the plaster casting and water and so on and so forth, just carry a can of it. It doesn't weigh hardly anything, and it makes it a really good impression of a footprint, or a cast of a footprint, I should say.
Is
so
there?
I was going to come back the next day.
Wait, I got to ask you this, because this is good information what you're bringing up, because a lot of people don't know this, and since you have some experience with it, and again, I apologize for interrupting, but I do that. I'm sorry. Spray insulation. It comes in different grades of how some of it has great expansion, some has very minimal expansion. What would you say would be the best for someone who was going to use it?
Either one. I don't think it really matters. The one that doesn't have a lot of expansion is the water-based product that I've found. And, of course, water-based isn't my favorite thing, because if it gets wet, you know what happens.
Right.
So I just use the aerosol can.
Right.
And, when I'm not carrying my plaster cast material. And it seems to work out pretty good. It's a lot lighter, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Because, you may or may not need water, so you need to take some water with you beside what you drink, so that adds more weight. And when I went down this creek, it was, when was it? Latter part of July. So it was pretty warm. And I had to go 2 or 3 different ways because of the briars and so on and so forth. But anyway, I go back to the truck, and I was going to go the next morning in rain for 2 days. So it was Sunday afternoon, I decided to go back. I went a different way. There's a farmer on the left-hand side of where the creek and the woods are that has an open field. And I asked him if I could, go over there. And he said, yeah. So I parked on the left-hand side of this field, walked across the cornfield, which was about a foot high. He just planted it not too long ago. And as soon as I hit the edge of the woods and the edge of the creek, I turned left. And as soon as I did, it started following me. And it was like a dozer going through the woods without the dozer sound. It didn't care if I knew it was there. It was breaking limbs, deadfall, knocking down small trees or whatever. And like I said, it was making quite a noise. And then I got to this area where I thought the creeks merged, and it's a couple acres there, or maybe an acre, where the farmer didn't get in there with his combine because it was kind of rough. And I put down my backpack, and when I did, I noticed another set of footprints. It was 15 inches long, pointing away from where the creeks merge, and it had a little baby footprint on in the heel of its mother's that I assumed it was his mother's for the size of the footprint. And it was about 2 inches long. So I put my backpack down, which has a sound recording, tape recorder in it. And I walked over to where the creeks were, and I heard this great big splash right before I could get to where the creeks merge and see because of the weeds. Then I get over to the edge of the creek, and it had ran over about 60 foot away or so, got behind a tree, and started growling at me. And it did a very peculiar growl. I have never heard one since. And this was in 2014. And it growled at me 8 times. Then the 8th time, I did a whoop, whoop, real loud, And after that, it never made another noise. And I've been going back ever since, about once or twice a year. I don't want to wear out my welcome with the landowner.
Right.
And take him peanut butter and apples and such like that. I think this time I'm going to go back and take him some honey. And I went, when was it, last year, I took another person with me, and we found a bow tie, which we took a picture of, and we found footprints in where an open field merges right into the woods, and the wagon road goes through the woods. Took pictures of it. Then we went down to where the creek was, and we're standing there on the edge of the creek about 10 or 12 foot apart. And the person looked at me and said, "Do you smell urine?" And I said, "Yeah, I think it's upstream, and I think he has just peed in the creek," because it was pretty potent smell.
Okay.
And the houses are just too far away. It couldn't have been anybody's septic system getting into the house or from the house into the creek. And after that, we left. And when I left, we went back the same wagon road. We went in on, and about every 100 foot in the middle of the road, they had torn off a limb, tore off from a tree about 3 foot long, and laid it in the middle of the road about every 100 foot apart. And I guess what they were doing was gifting us. Because when I go out to the same location, I try to wear the same clothes or the same color or type of clothes. I wear a boonie hat and so on and so forth. And camouflage shirt, maybe camouflage pants or a solid green pair of pants.
Yeah, and that's interesting that you say that, because it could be, where they could recognize you. So, how
they're smart.
Yeah,
They really are.
I have no other ways to think about it myself here. I'm in 100% agreement with you on that. How tall would you say your sighting was?
If he wasn't 8 foot, he was really close to it. And the
Okay.
shoulders on this thing, and like I said, I'm no little guy, and he would make 2 or 3 of me.
Yeah.
I would
Just
say his
thick.
shoulders 4 foot wide or wider.
Wow. Yeah, and that's it's so incredible. And
bit.
we hear this a lot, but that's just I get where you're at. It's just so incredible when you put your mind into this. And then we get some reports that people have seen them 10.5 foot tall, 11 foot tall, and they say that the shoulders were every bit as wide as the tailgate on the back of their truck.
Yeah.
And they got
Yeah,
one
I
of
wouldn't doubt that a bit.
and that's when you hear this type of information. I get why people are like, well, how can this not be seen? And it's fascinating to me because they do use the environment to their advantage, and that's because that's all they have. And I'm sure there's things that they do we probably wouldn't even comprehend in thought. Just like you saying when you go back, that's the first time I've heard somebody say this. And I've been doing this for over 47 years, like hearing stories. But you are the first one to tell me that you try to dress the same way every time you go back. And that would be like a way of saying, hey, there's that guy. They're going to remember you because your attire, maybe, or because of your hat. Or something that well, he's been here before. He's left us something on the gifting table and so forth like that. But yeah, just incredible on size and sound. So as you're leaving, going through this cornfield, you're telling me you're as you approaching it or you're going to it. In case I'm a little bit off here, it was crashing through the woods. How did you feel in that moment when you started to hear the strength and the noise, knowing what you saw?
Well, I knew exactly what it was, and that's the only thing that I know could go through the woods. I was raised on a farm. We had cows, horses, and the whole smear. And Dad worked construction, but we still had to farm with the horses and the cows and beef cattle. Even had a milk cow. Anyway, I knew what it was. And normally any animals, and I spent my youth in the woods, and normally any animal that goes through the woods does not make a noise like that. And you won't find a cow running through the woods where we were. The bank on this thing, I was totally amazed that it could keep its footing, because the bank on this thing was, I'd say, 35 to 45 degrees. And I didn't go, I was on the flat part in the cornfield, on the edge of the cornfield.
Mm-hmm.
And as for the woods on the far side, it's a steep slope going down to the woods. And it followed me like it was nothing to it.
Wow.
And I think one reason it was interested in me, I wasn't a farmer, I wasn't cutting down trees, and I wasn't a hunter because I didn't have a rifle. Now, don't get me wrong, I do carry, but I don't know that it knows what a pistol is. So, and I know they know what a rifle is because they've seen bird hunters, duck hunters, deer hunters especially, and they know what they can do. And so I think he was just curious in me. And besides that, what do they got to do except look for food 24/7,
Right.
And he was just interested. And I think I was talking to another guy in Kentucky that lives over around Lake Barkley in that direction. And we both came to the conclusion that it's somewhat of a mental attitude, I think, when you go out. Because I've had hunters tell me, I've taken reports all over Kentucky and Tennessee, and I've had hunters tell me, well, I've been hunting for 30 years and I ain't never seen nothing like that. And if you've got a rifle, you're going to get a mental attitude that you're going to go out and shoot something. And I think you project that mental attitude out. Now, whether these things can mind speak or read your mind, I think they can to a certain extent. Because I've just heard too many stories and talked to too many people. And I think they can actually kind of sense you. like a dog. My lab's laying right over there, and she knows when I'm in a bad mood. She kind of, I'm going to leave Dad alone. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, they do. You're right. They get it. They get it. Just like a child gets it, even when they're at a very young age and they may not understand everything. That's why I always say don't argue in front of children. I made that mistake of doing it, and it really puts them.
We all have.
It really puts the child in a very negative spot, without a doubt. As far as that. Well, that was a very interesting story. So, you have this encounter and you try to go back and revisit and whatnot. So, has anything besides that one encounter ever happened, or have you found any other footprints?
They do not want to be seen. They stay hid, and they're, I think, just right out of sight because I think I can sense them. When you're in the woods and anywhere, and someone's staring at you, you get that hair on the back of your neck kind of, they say, stands up or something. You kind of sense something is looking at you. Yeah. And I think they're the same way. And I think the reason they stay hid so well is their hair is probably a little translucent. It's clear. And it probably picks up sunlight and shadows, darkness and lightness. And they have a tendency to, like Green Beret or anybody, a ranger, they hide like a sniper. They hide in the bush, and a lot of times the only thing you're going to see is their head. Mm-hmm. And if they don't move, it's hard to spot anything, whether it's a bug or anything. And the best way to do it is like getting a used roll of toilet paper. They're an inch and a quarter in diameter, and shove one eye and put that over the other eye and look around. You'll point, you look all your effort into that one particular spot that you're going through. And you're more likely to see something by doing that than you are just having both eyes and looking straight ahead or looking behind you. I know one hunter that I have a GoPro, mm-hmm. and he puts one on his backpack, whereas he's seeing what is in behind him when he gets home and looks at it. And because a lot of times you'll walk by and maybe they'll look out or even halfway step out behind a tree. And of course, at your back, you'll never notice it. And I've learned too by camping out, I don't camp out hardly anymore, is that I take a trail cam and I point it at the tent. I hide it and point it at the tent. Because we were in an expedition in North Carolina, and we got there a day early, myself and another guy named James, and he was military, and I think he had done 2 or 3 tours in Afghanistan, was going back again, pressing his luck. But anyway, he asked me if I heard something, if I got out of the tent at night, and I said, no, I didn't. Did you? I was going to ask you. This was the next morning.
Correct.
And something had walked around our tent and kept on walking around our tent bipedal. And I've heard stories that you get up and start rustling around and unzip your tent, it takes off, so I didn't bother. But I heard the best howl that I ever heard anywhere. It was the longest, best howl. It was in Franklin, or 12 miles outside of Franklin, North Carolina. This thing went on and on and on. Now, you've heard of the Ohio howl. Yeah. It was about, I don't know how many octaves, but it was a higher pitch than the Ohio howl. But it made the Ohio howl look like a burp.
Wonder if it was a female.
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was a female.
Because if they do have so many human characteristics, the vocal cords might be a lot of the same. You know what I mean? How a woman can sing, and hit much higher octaves to where a man can't. We have that deeper baritone kind of thing.
Right.
That radio voice.
And they can also scream, and it sounds like a woman scream. And when I talked to a professor at Moorhead one time, we had a outing up there, and this was years ago, and he was saying that they all heard, his neighbors in the area heard a woman scream. Now this is kind of a 5 or 6 house congregation out in the middle of nowhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And except the highway going by, and they all heard. They called the cops, and they came out and looked around. And they couldn't find anybody. They walked through the fields and couldn't find any dead bodies or anything. And I didn't tell him that, but I came to the conclusion. I think it was the Bigfoot screaming, because they do that. Well, I have no idea.
Some of that is, we haven't really. I don't think anybody really stood in front of a Bigfoot yet, watched him put his hands up to his mouth and did whoops or, whatever, the loud growls or the screams. Could the possibility be that Dogman could be part of that somewhere that fits the puzzle, that we're hearing 2 different species? May not always be Bigfoot like we think. No one really talks a lot about the vocalizations from Dogman. They just talk about the encounters of spotting one, seeing one, trying to get a picture of one, etc. And all the vocalizations seem to be connected much stronger to Bigfoot. Would you agree on that?
Yeah, I think so. Then too, there's several different species or types of Bigfoot. There's a whistler and so on and so forth that they whistle quite loud. They're over in West Virginia and eastern Kentucky. They're called a whistler. And we have our type, and then the ones in Alaska, and then down the coast of California and Oregon and Washington State. I think they're a completely different kind. I think they're somewhat more meaner than the ones we have here. Maybe the ones here are used to people. And, they, because let's face it, if they really wanted to take you out, it would take about a half a minute. Oh
yeah, they could get a hold of you and take you down fast. And we know that because of some encounters. And I have someone that I've talked to just recently, and I'm not trying to let the cat out of the bag. I've given him my word of, as a man, give him my oath as a man, saying, look, when you're ready, I'm waiting for you. This is going to blow a lot of people's minds. And I've actually seen some things, and it blew my mind. When this story comes out, it's going to create a lot of attention, without a doubt. It's going to be, in my mind, one of the most factual sources of information, because they are not all nice. And again, as far as having cultures within them, it could very well be just like Indian tribes practice different things within their cultures. They do different songs, they do different music, they do different drums. So why would it be any different for Bigfoot to develop their own in certain segregated areas to create whistling or the whoops, or maybe in fact, the growl? And that's part of their information on how they know how to keep in contact with each other. The same as when the Indians would send up smoke signals, to their other family members who may have been, 50 miles from them, and they would see it through the valleys. They would see the smoke coming up, and it meant something. So maybe these vocalizations are doing the same thing that like the indigenous and the Indians did, as far as, being able to talk the family somehow by devising their own methods. And I agree that probability is 100%.
Yeah, I think of the house, they let each other know they're in the same area, and the tree knocks, like one tree knock, hey, there's a human here, hide.
Maybe.
Three tree knocks means a completely different thing, when they bam, bam, bam. And they have a communication. And matter of fact, they've had recordings of them in the Sierras where it's called what's it called? Samurai.
Yeah, the
chatter.
samurai chatter. Yeah, and that's true because I've heard that, and there is something to it. Now, what those fellas got out there that night, I'm not sure. They were there, but we know that different types of people have been analyzing it and said that there are certain indications of language within what they got off the recording.
Yeah, because they're family groups, and I don't know how far that extends. I know that family that I go back on, they have dad, mom, and 2 kids, and they may have another one by now. I don't know how often they reproduce, but and they might have grandma and grandpa there. I don't know.
Well,
I haven't seen. I've taken or talked to people that have seen white ones, and that might be like a sign of white hair. You're getting old, and maybe that. I don't know.
Well,
but there may be vinyl ones too. I don't know.
Yeah, and we, again, it's not a bad idea to, hypothesize on scenarios like that because they do exist. This is why everybody in the research and the groups of throughout America, throughout the globe, who support Bigfoot, need to let the guard down and let the information flow. Because
they're going to be caught with egg on their face, aren't they?
Some may.
Sooner or later, it's going to be a fact.
Yeah.
It's just like UFOs. Sooner or later, the government needs to say, hey, we need to release a little more information because sooner or later, it's going to hit the fan, and then the people are going to say, you've been lying to us for the last 60, 70 years.
Well, I got to tell you, I know for a fact that they've been lying for 60, 70 years. I can only speak from my own information, and I'm not going to change my story. I know they're factual. What I don't know is it theirs or is it ours? That's what I don't know.
I think it's both.
I agree too. I would say 99% of the time, it's probably things that we have that's going on, and we're going to deep dive into that MIC and these special programs just in another minute here. Of a different narrative.
F-17, that was stealth until they came out.
Right.
They started, doing their thing overseas. But it's easy for the government to just let people go, it's UFOs or, it's, aliens and so on and so forth, because I'm sure they've got some fantastic looking aircraft.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. And I do think that they're a lot further along, as everybody else says. I'm not the first one to say this, but I think there's a lot of support in it when when we talk how much further we are advanced. We know that, all right, so you got Bob Lazar, all right, and everybody says Bob Bizarre. No, I don't agree with that, because I tell you what, everything, George Norrie and all the other guys that, jumped into this on this bandwagon about his story, everything that he talked about is now factual. And I'm not saying every bit of it, but I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, he's rocking a 9 really strong here.
What was that element? 115?
Yeah, 115. Yes, 115. Yeah. He talked about that 30 years ago. And now they're saying, and it's in writing, it's on papers. If you're lucky enough to get the right paper when you're trying to get them under the Freedom of Information Act, which we talked about this afternoon too, how the narrative that works against us and how far it works against us and how costly now it is. If it's freedom and it's ours and our tax dollars paid for all this, it should not cost man a penny to get information. That's how I feel about it. But all right, so let's make a U-turn here. We're going to stay within the boundaries of what we're talking about. But you brought up something so fascinating this afternoon of a theory. And I know Linda Moulton Howe's been one of the biggest rock stars out there. Well, not by herself. churches talked about it. Popes talked about it. Dolan. I mean, I could go on with so many names, really, because there's a lot of greats out there who have compiled their entire life. Me, I might have a mega amount of time into things, but they weren't my direct focus of life for those years. They were my hobby. They were the things when I didn't have time to read, I watched on TV information, but in different ways. But for 47 years, I've been into it that way. And a couple years ago, it gave me a better reason of knowing what my hunch was all the time was truly a reality. And I'll talk about that in a little bit, but I want to hit this point on your theory on the mutilations in the cows and different things. And I'd like to get into these projects with you right now, if we can, and throw that out to America, just to let them know when you want to know how deep the swamp is. I mean, it's very deep. And they'll do anything to protect themselves. They'll do anything to utilize our tax dollars to create narratives for creation of all different on all different levels. It doesn't mean if they're trying to figure out new rocket systems or hypersonic. None of it matters. It's all about how they can best use your tax dollars and how they can increase the tax dollars to have more fun money. And this is why this narrative, it blows me away that you brought up today. Why don't you tell everybody about what you found out, what you've researched right now that pertain to this, and what you think some of the narrative is with the radiation poisonings and different things like that, because they made movies about this stuff.
Yeah, years ago, I just tripped over some information, quite by accident, really. But it was Operation Plowshare.
Right.
Plowshare. And it was started, 70 years ago. And what they would do is on these gas wells out west, New Mexico, and so on and so forth, Colorado and Arizona and stuff, especially New Mexico, they would go down and dig deep. I mean, really, really deep. And they'd set off a nuke. Somewhat low yield, but it was still a nuke. Mm-hmm. And what happened, they increased, this one in particular I'm talking about is Operation Gas Boogie. It happened about 50 miles or so away from Dulce. And it was on the lower eastern part of the Apache reservation there. And they set off this nuke, and it increased gas production 7 times. There's only one slight problem to it. It was radioactive. So you can't sell radioactive gas to the public. So Albert Einstein decided, and this is hard to find, they've kind of erased this information now, let's set it on fire and burn it. It burned for years. I mean years. And it just quit burning in just a few years ago. And this was done in, when was it? Like 47 or something like that. Gas Boogie was done December the 10th, 1967, rather. And so the thing about it, this was done by the Livermore Agency out of California. Now, you can look them up. They became the Atomic Energy Commission. And if you set a fire, whether it's from an oil well or whether it's a house fire, a building fire, a bonfire, whatever, there's going to be vapors go up into the atmosphere. And when these vapors go up, they're going to come back down sooner or later. It's going to be in the form of rain. And the rain's going to get on the food, the ground, the water, the cattle, everything. So what better way to test for radiation than to take a bunch of cows, pick them up by a chopper, and take them away, suck the blood out of them, cut some of the vital organs out, and then bring them back and drop them. And there was one particular person, Greg Vandalis, or that's his son, rather, Gabe Vandalis. And he used to take his son, Greg, with him when he was about 5 or 6 years old to go take pictures. He was a state trooper, and he would take pictures of these cattle mutilations. And one in particular, he said, was his favorite. He walked up, and the cow was 20 foot in a tree. Where when they had dropped it, they dropped it right over a tree, and it got lodged in the tree. Well, Greg has even written a book about his father's exploits. And what I'm getting at is what better way to, and I'm not saying they're all government done,
right,
or scientific done. ETs supposedly have done these for years. I mean, going back hundreds of years. But anyway, they check the blood, they check the tissue, and they know if radiation or how much radiation is being released. And then, too, we've all heard stories about like the 6,000 sheep that were killed one night out west. Some nerve agent probably got out. And that's a good way to check for that, too.
You know, it's really funny you brought that up, because they all about the point in time of that. 2 other incidents occurred, okay, when you're talking about these nukes. And I think it's right up near me, actually, in Pennsylvania. We started to get a fire under a complete town, and they had to vacate the entire town. And I think that we got
on fire.
Right, and they, hey, everyone's got to get out. And now it's still sitting there. You can still look down into the ground, and then all of a sudden, it seems like we ran into what was called acid rain testing. And I think it correlates with what you're talking about on, the contaminations in the atmosphere, what the animals are ingesting and doing testings. And I love the theory that you have on this. Now, again, in ways, it makes sense that they would be checking, because there's been movies made, Julia Roberts did a movie where she worked in a law firm about how toxic chemicals were dumped into waterways and so forth, and covered up and hidden by the elites, the government, and told to do so because they had permission. These are some of the things that happen with this great government that we, but everybody knows what's going on now. So we find so much out. But yeah, so I'm just wondering in my mind, not that I wanted to interrupt you, because you tell it in a very fascinating way. And I know people have to have a great interest in things like this, without a doubt. But the acid rain testing all started around the same time. So it makes perfect sense what you're saying. If they were contaminating the atmosphere that much, and we know that JFK introduced, I think, I'm not sure of the year, it might have been 62, where he made an announcement for climate and the design for climate weatherization programs, where man makes weather. And they narrate us with it now, of course, because now their objective's different. It's sun and dim, block the sun, the Earth's overheating, the ice caps are melting, suggestion, fear. What are they doing that, could possibly be adding to this? Because you're right, rain brings everything down. And it's a contamination of everything that it brings down that goes into the atmosphere. Now, some things do escape the lower atmosphere and get up as high as into the stratospheres and whatnot. I don't know what happens up in that area, how the cold handles different scenarios versus, heat scenarios as you come lower due to what the sun's abilities are. But
the magnetic field on the Earth is decreased by 10%. Proven fact.
Well, I've heard
for solar flares and such.
Right. And there's a big scare to that scenario going around right now. I don't know. I'm going to tell you the truth. I don't know if it's 10, 15, 20%. I have heard that we are having scenarios. But I think these scenarios have occurred because of the things and some of the testings that they have done. And I think they're taking us into a different format of what this all means, so to speak. But I don't want to narrate too much further out of this. I want to stick to the guns on what you brought forth because it's really incredible. So,
yeah, well, they did 27 separate tests out there and used 31 warheads. And what finally put an end to it, I think it was one of the states above Colorado. They wanted to drill a hole and put 4 nukes, one on top of each other. And finally, the people said, enough is enough. I mean, this is ridiculous. But one point I want to make, and I won't tell you why, gets into a completely hot subject, that these were 4,227 foot deep.
Interesting.
So, these people finally in the States said enough is enough and stopped all this. But I'm just flabbergasted that they decided to set this stuff on fire. They even have a word for it. I forgot what it is.
When they start the fire?
Yeah, when they burn, frack it off.
Yeah.
Like they call it something. I forgot what it is. But
if anybody knows, they'll type it in and they'll give us a heads up. I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure, but I know that they do it, and I know that they have reasons for doing it. It's scientific reasons. If it's for the good or the bad, I don't know. Which brings up something else that I started to talk to you about. We're seeing these different indications now on certain parts of the United States, and it could be a worldwide phenomena type thing, like where trees mysteriously start on fire internally and combust.
Yeah.
So
what's up with that?
I'm thinking maybe that there's so much underground. There's probably passages and pockets. And if they start a fire, maybe this thing burns internally somehow as well, and we don't understand it. Of course, scientifically, they're not going to give us all the information that we would want to understand it. We deserve it, but we're not going to get it from them.
Well, it's like that town you were talking about in Pennsylvania. That thing's been burning for years. They've tried everything to put it out.
Exactly.
And, it's getting oxygen from somewhere.
Exactly.
To have a fire, you have to have fuel, and you have to have oxygen.
Yeah.
So it's getting oxygen from somewhere. And look at the cave system. And that gets in with poor old Admiral Byrd, the hollow earth thing. And if you go to out west, I don't know if it's the Navajo or the Hopi Indians, said they were saved by ant people, taking them underground, and they lived underground for a long time.
Yeah, I think the Hopi was. Yeah, I think the Hopi was one of the strongest ones that we. And I could be wrong. There could be other cultures of these, Indians that probably have other information. Just something sticks out in my head to identify that story, and these beings. They just seem to connect in my mind for some reason. I don't know why, to be honest with you. But you're right. The hollow earth, and we also have the hollow highways that go from coast to coast. And not only that, and I've talked on a couple other programs about this. Some of our naval systems of the submarines. Now, even in the past, I would say 40, 50 years, maybe in the mid 60s, we were finding different aquatic life deep 4,000 or 5,000 feet in the water. And they were also coming upon caves, which they then found out that they could go into these cave systems, tunnel systems from the ocean, and come all the way up into the mid-central United States. That they're that big.
They say they have a submarine. I don't know what you'd call it, a submarine tunnel that can go quite a distance into the United States.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And that blows my mind. But we also know, too, that one of the other things, because we talk about cryptids a lot, and that's everything unknown, of course. And until we can actually prove it, down at Craft, someone sit down with and make friends with the hairy man or Dogman as a pet. I'm just saying, I know it sounds a little ridiculous, but that is what everybody wants. They want us to be able to isolate that proof. Well, there's a lot of things I want them to isolate. I want them to isolate C19 too, because they've never been able to do it. If it's real, isolate it. If you can't isolate it, then it doesn't exist. It may exist, but it doesn't exist in the magnitude with the fear factor they throw into things. But yeah, the hollow earth, the highways beneath. And I had a friend, I used to call him Trucker. That's what he did. He drove a truck. And he was one of the very first people to tell me, because he worked for a company. They did transport for government transports. And he says it's mind-blowing. You don't get a red light. You just cruise all the way. Once you land that contract and you get those passes, you do nothing but travel this underground interstate from one end of the country to the other. And all you do is deliver to all these underground MIC, military industrial complex, cities, and experimental labs and more. So that takes us to another swinging narrative that we talked about a little bit in the past. About
they don't get out of their cab of their truck either.
Not that I'm aware of.
They stay in.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you. I don't know if there's any rest spots for truckers down there. I really don't know. I don't know. But I think if McDonald's is on the surface, it's probably underground as well. Hey, the possibilities exist if they're allowing people, and when you look at the full focus of the picture and the things that were brought into light, and I know I say this name a lot, but Phil Schneider told us a lot. That story is just impressively amazing. He even
Can I tell you something about that?
Sure, go ahead.
When I was on one of these outings, they had these group speakers, and one of them was on the same talk circuit as Phil Schneider. So he was out there by himself and out in front of the motel, and I just walked up to him and asked him how he's doing. He said, "All right, And I just said, "Let me ask you a question straight away. You don't have to tell me. You don't have to answer. I understand. Is this thing Phil Schneider is talking about, is it true?" He looked at me without hesitation and says, "Knowing Phil, I believe it is." That's all he said.
Well, I didn't know the man, but I can't see where anybody was ever able to debate his information with him in a way that could prove anything but not him being honest. Look, he worked for Area 51. He was a geologist engineer. He was, he worked on the ventilation systems. He did the pre-drillings. They did all the dynamics of, information that they needed to do to know where they could build. And it's just fascinating what these machines can do. And they can do 7 miles a day. These nuclear tunnel diggers will do 7 miles a day. And these tunnels turn into just glass, liquefied glass from the sandstone and whatnot.
Used to be able to do 20 years ago. Just think what they can do now.
Well, I can't make any comment on it because I haven't heard any updates on it. It's something that we haven't had the information on.
I don't think people get it either.
No, probably not. Probably not. And I know in some cases we had to give up the equipment, dismantle what we could, get the nuclear devices, energy devices off of it, and they had to leave some of them down there. Now, I don't know if it's down there for future purposes or what, but I know in some cases that I came across issues where that narrative came out. But I can only comment on what I know is factual. And I know the 7 mile theory is very, very real, that the machine had that type of capabilities. And um, look, this is why I say we're a taxation of slavery, because they're just having a ball creating this whole underground mechanism. Some people call them tunnels, the hollow earth. Some people call them the dumbs. You know, I don't know what they all are, to be quite honest with you, but I do know one thing. I do know that the format of some of these tunnels and highways go through the national parks. And that's why when Trump, and I'm not trying to go far off the deep end here on, you know, the politic end, but that's why when Trump, you know, said, hey, he talked to the BLM, and again, that's not politics, that's Bureau of Land Management. They had a lot of control of land leases and whatnot. And Trump said, hey, I want to make us independent. Let's get down there and do what we can. Well, a couple things happened. So they couldn't wait to get that project shut down when the new administration came into hand. They took that all down. And now the BLM is now saying, hey, no, come on back in. We'll let you have your land lease back. But the problem is they were going through so many catastrophic issues trying to they were penetrating these underground industrial highway complexes and didn't know it because they're not on the maps for the normal people. They're hidden, they're suppressed in special projects. You know, a lot of these things. We have a maglev system that goes from Area 51 into other states. Like, you take a plane into Area 51 to go to work, and then in some cases, some people will go there, they'll go to S4. And in some other cases, they get on a maglev and you're on it for 40 minutes. The thing does 500-600 miles an hour, supposedly. I think Every Smith talked about that on some of his narrating of when he came out as a whistleblower, and said that
Mach 2? What's Mach 2? What speed is that?
Mach 1, what is it, like 672 miles an hour to break the sound barrier?
What would be 2? Be 1200?
1200, yeah, so? just double multiply.
I've heard they go Mach 2.
Yeah. They could very well do it, because I know China has something that can do like what you're talking about. It can do 1.5 to 1.7 Mach. So the possibility, you know, with that exists. And that was one of the reasons, if you even think about it. I don't know if you heard this, but and again, I don't want to get into politics, but this is the deep end. Even Biden said, look at what China's done with the greatness of their maglevs and train systems, and why we need to not, you know, worry about or caring about a solution to having oil and what's the word I'm looking for? I'm in a brain fog here.
Petroleum products?
Well, yeah, petroleum products are the essentials that we need to keep us independent. So the point is, though, they have all these things that were shared, but not shared to all the presidents. You know how there are certain things when you come into office that they're going to talk to you about, but they may not give you all the factual information. Well, depending upon,
there's some presidents, they tell more stuff too than others.
Correct. And then you have to outsource. And that's when Stephen Greer would come into some scenarios. Now, I'm not saying Stephen's a bad apple here. I really do believe that he had great ties to a lot of people that exposed a lot of things. And he was able to sit with presidents. We do know that. He went over things. But when they were briefing the presidents, like even Reagan had tears in his eye when he found out some of the information. He didn't want to believe it. And that was one of the reasons that he put Star Wars up, and wanted to make sure that the space program continued, because the space program was something that was essentially started even before Reagan. It went back into the Kennedy and before administration. And then you look at the facet of, you know, bringing in all these German scientists and whatnot, you know, over to the United States here, von Braun and everybody, rocket scientists, specialists, and this, that, and the other. It makes you just wonder who's.
Yeah, but look at what we had before von Braun and his little stormtrooper buddy, SS buddy.
Yeah. Yeah, they're mind
Yeah.
blowing. Those guys, some of them, and look what they believe in too. They get into
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
the paganism, the satanic, the ancient, and
Crawley
everything.
and what was the other one? Crawley and what was the other one?
Oh, I know who you're talking about. I can see his face, but I can't think of his name. I wish, I need to actually create a blackboard and put up like all the special factors, because we come back to them so many times in conversations. I need a blackboard with the special factors, the special names, and the special projects sometimes, because it's hard to remember everything doing so many different platforms with so many different levels. Some people come out and they'll talk about one narrative. You come on here, sometimes we talk about everything. And we might trip, we might fall, we might not be able to get it all out in that moment, but that's where we'll come back on the next show and make it up to you. But no, yeah, these guys, were just mind-blowing. And if you look at Aleister Crowley and the things that he was involved in too, look at the narratives that surround him and his scientific experiments. And then how far back and what made Tesla so special, I don't know. But I mean, the fabric of the United States of America is running off Tesla right now. Musk knows it. They're using his technology and his works. And a lot of people that I've talked about this, you may not know this, President Donald J. Trump's uncle was part in the deep state program who went and basically confiscated a majority of these cases that he kept him in, that you might want to call. I call them, they were basically like the old shipping travel boxes, wooden boxes that they had back in the day.
Get 6 or 7 of them?
Well, he had a lot. He had over 70. So we don't know.
Yeah, but there's 6 or 7 they never found.
There's some shows on that too, and I think the number may be a little bit higher. But
could be.
And then look where he lived. He lived below a power plant, which I'm going to let you talk about that in a second too, because I know you have some other information about one of the world's largest power plants in the United States and what that might correlate to. But no, here he lives in this hotel with secret doors and tunnels that take him all over the city, anywhere he wants to go. And in the basement, this place was big enough to power up half of a city. It had its own power station, power source. And why would they need to have that there? And if he was truly in his retirement day, I mean, they used him through his entirety of the last 20 years of his life for all government projects and developments. And remember, they feared him because he figured out to create energy out of black matter, out of the atmosphere, and said in a 1-inch cubicle could power a house for like a month.
Yeah, he was into the free energy thing. Matter of fact, that's why Rockefeller and everybody pulled the money.
Yeah, they stopped his grants. Yeah, they stopped all the grants.
They wanted to make the money. Yeah.
Well, of course.
And if he hadn't tore up the check that he got for AC current from Westinghouse and his contract, he would be the richest person on earth, bar none. He was going to get a certain percentage off of every watt of electricity that was sold in the world.
Yeah. I know there was a check. I don't know why he didn't particularly sign it. I think there's a lot of hearsay that surrounds it, but I know there's a deep truth to it. And
I heard Westinghouse was broke, and he asked him not to.
So you're saying Westinghouse was actually broke and said, "Don't cash the check."
Right, something to that effect. Not quite, a little more
interesting,
gentle persuasion there, and money wasn't his thing. He was the inventor, and he didn't care about family or women or nothing.
How do you think how do you think he figured out so much? Do you think?
I think it came to him. It just flowed in him like Einstein. I've heard that when he came up with the energy equal, velocity squared, MC2 square, or MC square, he was sitting in his bathtub, and it just came to him. And then he got to thinking about it. It's just like the TR3B and whether it be the 3 or 4 or whatever. The guy that made the propulsion system or thought of a propulsion system, and I don't know if they did it, I assume they did it, is that he was going to put a bubble around a craft. And he said that way it would be separated from the physics laws, physical laws that we know of. Aquarian, Miguel Acuberry or something like that. He was a Mexican physicist. And he was watching Star Trek. And, give me better warp speed, Scott. You got to have more warp. And he got to thinking about it. And he, like I said, was a physicist, mathematician. So he started putting pencil to it, and he came up with the Acuberry theory.
And these are the geniuses. And these are the geniuses too that were also basically, I don't want to say manhandled in, but when the government has interest in you because of your brilliance, like the Philadelphia Project and things like that too, wherever anything concerned energy, even Einstein didn't have the brilliance of Tesla, and they always had to get Tesla in. Tesla had to pass on everything before.
Well, you talk about the Philadelphia experiment. Do you know the main scientist in on that?
Did I know the main? I'm sorry, I'm not sure I heard you right.
Do you know the main 3 scientists were in on that? One was Tesla, of course.
Einstein.
Yeah, and you know the name of the other one?
I do.
Most people don't. You can't hardly find nothing on this guy.
No, wait a minute. I've done a lot of research on it, and I even know the guys that were that claimed to be in part of the research during the testing of it. Al Buick and his brother, they were actually on board while they did this testing experiment. Let me think. I keep going back to the testimony and the lectures that I'm pretty sure you pronounce it Buick, not Buick his car, but Buick, Al Buick, and oh my God, man, I'm really in a. All right, just tell me. All right, I'm willing to accept the.
I'm looking for his name. Wasn't it Thomas Brown?
That doesn't sound familiar to me.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't to nobody. And
I know that there were 3.
Smart, if not smarter than Einstein.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you. I mean, it's something we can get into and put any corrections out there that we need to, or not corrections, but we get further into this, because I know we're going to get back together. It's just too much.
Thomas Brown.
Is that what it was? Thomas Brown?
Yeah. He did Project Winter Haven.
Okay.
And Einstein and, of course, Tesla. But then I've heard Tesla gets a lot of blame for a lot of stuff at the end there. And I believe Tesla had died before they did the Philadelphia experiment.
Well, that's the part that's so secretive. And we hear some stories that have come out where some people talk that they just basically moved him and all of his belongings that they felt that he would need and took him to a hidden location for whatever reason. I don't know. It had to do with another black project. Now, is that true? I don't know. Is the date and everything that we think we know about this man factual? I can't conclude. I can't conclude that it isn't anyway. They say he also died broke. How do you die broke when you're working for the government? You don't die broke. I mean, they made.
Well, he's probably one of these people who never cashed a check. As long as he had a place to sleep and a little something to eat,
Right.
and he only slept for a few hours a night.
Yeah, he had a hard time sleeping.
Yeah, he was a hard time. And I think his ideas just came to him.
Either that, or he was a remote viewer, or he's one of these people that gets downloaded information for whatever reasons. You know, in dreams, we don't always understand dreams, but information does come to us. We don't always know how to put it together or analyze it. A lot of people hypothetically say that they know what it means, you know, but I don't think everybody knows what everything is. Is there something else to the whole big picture of what we understand of the dimensions and more? And let's face it, Germany, and I really think that they were way, way beyond us in the United States. They were just fascinating in science. You know, it's mind-blowing where they were with things. But nevertheless, we go back to this. When I go back to Tesla, I really do believe they hit him in the latter years. And I don't know exactly why. And I don't know if any of us will ever know why, because we don't even know of a factual date of burial. We have a date of death, but we don't actually have a factual date of burial. And then we have to question the fact, if it was even true, could we, dig them up and check and get a DNA sample to make sure? You know, because
but you'd have to have something to correlate it with. You know,
I say that we have to exhume his body and check it, because we've been lied to on too many fronts. All right, so look, I'm really enjoying this, but I know one of the other things that we wanted to get into was the world's largest power plant that you were talking about.
That's a Dulce, New Mexico.
Right. I didn't want to leave it out on you.
And Dulce is about the town of size of not much. And I'm not knocking Dulce, don't get me wrong. My hometown wasn't very big either. But they have two power plants. And the one, I don't know if it's coal-fired to this day or not, since all this gas fire plant stuff has come about. But it was the United States' largest coal-fired power plant in the United States. And they had another one besides that. Now, why do they need that much power?
Yeah.
In Dulce, New Mexico. Now, if you'll look, Colorado's above it, and there isn't nothing around it to speak of. And Project Gas Boogie was a few miles away, where they set off the nuke in the well. And I've heard stories about Dulce, too.
Well, there's a lot of stories about Dulce. There's not enough time in the evening to discuss all the hypothetical scenarios that surround that place.
And I think if a fraction of it's true, there's something there.
Yeah. What do you think about the superstitious mountains?
I think there's something there. It's just like Mount Hayes in Alaska. What was that remote viewer that? This was going back to the what I say about movies and stuff. Most of these movies have a point or two of truth to them in the science fiction realm. Is that there's a remote viewer sitting in his little underground cave, for the government, drawing pictures, and come to find out that E.T. was working with humans
right
underneath Mount Hayes. And there's no way to get to Mount Hayes unless you're a bird. You know what I mean?
Right.
And whether it's true or not, but then here again, you have a lot of people that show up missing in Alaska.
Mount Shasta, same thing there.
Yeah. Alaska's population is less than 800,000 people, but in the last 30 years, 16,000 have showed up missing.
Yeah, I think the number is even a little greater than that. We were talking about some of that with the missing 411 and how this some of these things correlate with it, and this treaty and different things that have been discussed through the Eisenhower administration and the deals that were made there. And looking, was it 1952, 1953? What did we have? 6 or 7 UFO crafts right over the White House.
Yeah, it was.
And they dusted us.
Fleet of them.
Yeah, they dusted us. They made their presence known, and I think there was a point to it. What the point?
I think they're going to do another point to it before too long, because they may be getting impatient with us, and if the war continues, I believe they do not want us to use nukes, because who knows what nukes really do.
What if they're part of the system of what we're seeing and living within right now? What have you ever looked at the probability that there may be some truth to that, James?
Oh yeah.
I mean, we have to look at both sides. I'm at the point in life where I say, I hear, and I'm going to say this foremost and as strong as I can. I loved everything T did. He was one of the best presidents since Reagan ever. But as he always says, I told you so. Well, if he always knew everything, coming in, making the difference where he did was not the most important difference. Why didn't he come in? Now, this is just me theorizing here. Why didn't he come in and say, look, yeah, we have a deep state. We're going to get to it. But it's not just a deep state. It's a deep global effort of bloodlines, riches, and wealth, and of magnitudes that we just can't fathom. And then he said at one point in time that there were some very, very angry people with him, very rich, very powerful people.
Exactly.
More powerful than the United States of America's military when we were at our strongest point 2 years
Well, they control the wealth. They control the wealth.
Well, why do we need wealth if we? Well, here's the thing. We could debate on that all day long. But I guess my thought is this, and is why didn't he say, look, we have a major scenario here, and before we move forward anywhere, we need to go into project cleanup, or nothing we do is going to matter for the future. We didn't do none of that.
He may have wanted to during his second term, but he never got to that point.
I agreed.
In fact, he was doing Project Looking Glass.
Right. We've talked about that. Looking into the future.
And, seemed like in 2014,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't work too good anymore. So what happened then, or I don't know. But that's just what I've heard.
That was gifted to us by an alien.
Evan,
yeah.
Evan. There are 3 races of grays, and evidently they're one of the better ones. I believe the other grays are not too nice. They're like the Dracos, lizards.
Well, I think when we come across that, you're absolutely right. But some of them are just one source of them is just technology.
Yeah.
But there are 2 sources that are, from what I understand, from what I've learned in my life, they are basically living beings. But there are some that are just robotic, AI technology, transhumanism. And they fly a lot of these crafts that make a lot of these things happen. But again, we could theorize around that too. But I just want to get back to America and say, look, my most humble apologies. I'm not attacking them. Maybe the steps that were taken were beautiful and perfect, but they didn't work out for us. Even though he said, look, they're gonna get us on the election. He wasn't wrong about that either.
No.
So maybe we did the wrong things first. Maybe making America great again would have been better. And I don't want to use words that's going to get me knocked off every platform in America. I went through that once already, and I have gone through that. But I think everybody knows what I'm saying. I know a bunch of guys that would have suited back up, re-signed on, and went on in full military gear and probably cleaned up whatever was necessary to clean up. So everything that came forth from that time, whether it was a year to do it or 2 years to do it, we would have then been in a position where he would have never lost the election for the second term. It would still be making America great right now. I just don't know. I mean, here again, I don't know all, I don't know everything, but I know people came to him and said, "Look, you got to run for president." Um, you know, they kind of twisted his arm to do it, and he's surrounded by people with a, a lot of money, a lot of wealth, a lot of brains, a lot of understanding on how politics works, a lot of understanding about how bad it really was, and they needed somebody to come in that was a long shot but could change America. And here, they helped him do it. He gets in, he puts all these executive orders in place, he helps out all the cultures in America. He doesn't pick one. He looks out for the farmers, which means everything's sustainable for human life here in America, and for us to outsource into the world as well. I mean, yes, so many good things. The Keystone Pipeline, all these things. But again, it takes me back to a narrative where I have to look at, when you look at who these people are, and I don't know if it's the Germans, and the Germans made contact first, because look at the remote viewing that they did, and the psychics and everything else, and the informations that they were getting from it. And they never let up. And the facts that they were more, if you really look into the history, they were fascinated with religious objects and anything that possible that the Templars had their hands on. They wanted all the religious artifacts. That was one of the things, key foundations, when they went in and destroyed countries, that they took all the relics and artifacts and gold and paintings. There was a whole room. I can't remember if it was the Amber Room or the Emerald Room, where they actually had. Amber Room. They had, yeah, they took the whole entire room because it was made of emeralds. So
they never have found it that we know of.
No, there's so much of history, of importance of history, that is buried deep somewhere. Look, we know who the family names are. We know who they are. I'm not going to say them out loud. There's no sense, because I get slammed enough. And they suppress me even. Hey, he's going on as doing his Bigfoot show tonight. We'll stop all his shares. This stuff happens. That's why I tell people, if you're joining in tonight, please share us into all your favorite groups if you're still there. Come on, this is great conversation too. I really hope that you all are. Finding out about Jim's Bigfoot story tonight, and a little bit touching on the Antarctic. Hey, Berg, was it Harley Berg?
No.
The son, was Richard. His name Harley?
Oh, his son? I don't know. I don't remember, to tell you the truth.
That just came into mind. That's why I was asking. That just came into mind.
Have you noticed, though, a lot of these people that have done these things, their families,
mm-hmm.
You ever run any correlation between that?
I find correlation that there are, I want to say the right word without it twisting my tongue. Legitimacies. What's it called?
Were they silenced?
I think in some ways, a lot of people through the years, well, you know how silence goes. Follow Hillary Clinton's trail. It's all suicidal.
No thanks. I don't want to follow her.
No, but I mean, hey, look, she was actually, I have a picture of her, and I believe she was with Rothschild at his mansion. She's walking through the garden with him, and in her hand is a book about aliens. So to me, that must have been a very impressive conversation that they had. This is why when I say, what's the end game here? Is it really about them? If we go according to what the Georgia Stones say, I don't want to, I got to leave out some wording here. So the Georgia Stones, everybody knows the importance and the integrity of the warning of that. If it's really all about that, and weaponry of climate, and diversity of lies. One of the things I found out that blew my mind was I actually started calling some of the pharma companies. This is a long time ago I did this. And I said I was a kid in high school, and I just needed to know, like, how long does it take them to manufacture this thing that we were all going to need? And I have to watch my wording. And when they gave me the numbers and I put all the logistics, everything together, and I didn't talk to everybody, but I talked to two companies, the two main companies. It would have taken them 30 years to mass produce, even with other countries getting involved, to create enough medication to just get the first one done. So how long before effort was all this in place? Forever. It was in place and planned forever. And I'm not trying to bring this in as a politic end, but it's factual truth. They can't do it. The assembly line only works so fast, and they haven't tried to make it any bigger. Although, again, now they have a different type of growth. They've made more money now in the last 2.5 years than ever before. Pharma was dying. They needed unburied somehow. This was part of the unburying of pharma to help it get stronger. And when you look at the billions that the hospitals made, and that was a complete control mechanism. You can only treat one way. You can only give one thing. You can't talk about this. And if anybody asks for that, you can't write a prescription for this. I mean, look, so here we are. So what's the whole narrative? If we're not here anymore, and there's very minimal amount of people left on Earth, I guess you will always need so many people to keep a function going. But for what purpose and for who? Because money will no longer become important.
No.
So
they're just power hungry, and you just work.
So, but James, if they succeed,
Star Trek, they say they don't have any money.
Right.
Those Star Trek shows, and that's what they're doing. They just do their job, and then they get fed and clothed and so on and so forth, and they're happy campers.
And that's what they're talking about.
They're even happier.
And that's exactly what they're talking about. You'll own nothing and you'll be happy. But so money's off the table. And somebody in this world's going to have all these beautiful artifacts, and the ones torn down are going to be ripped down further and hidden or destroyed some other way because of an ancient belief, of a different religion, of a different narrative, of a different power struggle. But when we go into that ancient part, no matter if it's Göbekli Tepe or the fact that now we understand too, in case no one knows about this, we find crystal pyramids under the Bermuda Triangle. That should be coming out very shortly. It's out already, but it'll come out with much more strength. And the vibrations of how the pyramids, what did the ancients know? Who were the ancients that came here? Are they still working with them? Are these beings possibly still alive? Think about this. They talk about the 8 kings that ruled for 240,000 years. How is that possible unless you have something like these med beds? And I'm not talking about a knockoff med bed for $5,000. I'm talking med beds, and they do exist.
You're talking something works.
I'm sorry?
You're talking about something that actually works.
Yes, there are real ones that work, and almost every hospital has one. They're only for the rich, the powerful, the elites, and everyone says, think about this. How the hell are they living so long? They go in for weekly treatments in these beds. Well, guess what? We find out that these sarcophaguses were being used for the same thing, the same principle. One sarcophagus, listen to this. This is mind-blowing, okay? I talked about this a few weeks ago, but it does blow my mind. We went in there. First off, you can't even get this thing into the room. There's no way. And it would take a lot of people don't understand when they create this thing. You need a size surface of about 3 times the size in order to make a third of the size exist. Okay? That didn't come from the room either. So how did it get in there? It's unbeknown to me. It doesn't make sense. But what they have found out inside this, and I think Billy Cooper talked about this. He's a rock star, man. This guy. Anyway, one of his theories were, by what he saw with his own eyes, something blew a hole in the side of the chamber where the bed was. And it was something of a high energy directional weapon or some type of technology that helped create this med bed that these kings would go in, and it warped the granite. Now, listen, it didn't blow it to bits. It didn't crack it. But the power that came through this hole, and you can line this all up because it's too heavy to move. No one's tried to move it. It warped it. So they know something of high energy got to this granite and caused this. And the only thing that they can come up with that's plausible is the fact that we do know about ancient technology that has been found where they were able to create these med beds that they call them med beds. But again, you're going to pay, $500,000 to get one of these things. And as I say, they are distributed around. I'll give everybody else a little tidbit of information. Why the hell's NASA in Egypt? Do you know we have a division of NASA in Egypt?
Yeah, I do. I knew that.
Yeah, it's mind blowing. Well, a lot of the listeners may not have inclination of that. And then we have ownerships in certain things in Egypt, certain historical landmarks. It's like certain people bought pieces of it, of certain pyramids and certain things. It's mind blowing. That's why it's so much fun to talk about this stuff. What's on your mind now, James? Because I'm still trying to figure out who the hell these global elites are working with, man. I don't know if they're aliens or what, but it's like nothing makes sense to me. It's like they're preparing. They want to prepare this for something to come. Could that Planet X theory be really true?
Well, there's more and more theories coming out that some of these high-ranking people aren't human, and I don't know. But
well, that's the bloodline. What is it? RH bloodline? That they are the ancient ones.
Yeah, and they have a way. They either can change themselves or project an image that they want you to see.
Right.
Whereas very few people. There's been, like I said, I get back to these science fiction shows for years. Even one of the wrestlers was in one of these shows, old time wrestling, and he was in one of these shows where these people were really not human, but he put on these glasses or something, or maybe he was the only one that could see him, and there's been show after show after show with this, like the Stargate movie that came out, and it was movies and it was a series and so on and so forth, and Stargate was really remote viewing. And then I wondered, they're using that as remote viewing, but really, is there what do you call it, a Stargate or a portal? Because I've heard there's portals the government is really working on, hot and heavy. In other words, they want to go to Mars, but they step through a ring and they're instantly transported to Mars or wherever,
Yeah, that's called the jump rooms.
Yeah.
Jump rooms, which they said were developed under Tesla. Now, I don't know. I don't know if they're factual, but when you talk to people who've been in the space program, the SSP and different divisions of it, where they call it the 20 years and back, 30 year and back program.
Right.
Yeah, there's
time travel.
Yeah, this is mind blowing stuff when you put these analogies together. But look, stand.
Part of the Looking Glass project was being able to see into the past and the future.
Correct.
And it all goes along. And the more people talk about this, I think more truth is going to come out, or more information is going to come out, I should say.
Well, the jump room with Looking Glass is part of how we had plants go back in time where people see these indications of people not fitting the scenario of their dress or sunglasses and so forth, and have pictures taken, and then go back.
Or a cell phone.
Well, look, supposedly we found one that was 5,000 years old in a locked in a tomb for 5,000 years. So what the hell is that?
Well, look at that one rock hound out west. He liked this rock, the looks of it, and some of these people, they call them rock hounds. They love to collect rock, but he collected this rock, cut it open, and they had a carbon dating, and it was 250,000 years old, and it had a transistor in it.
Yeah. And then you got the tolls, and then you have the foot of the giants. And here, when it comes to the giants and all that, we got to get together and do something on it, because I have some. I think my theories are mind bending, because I put a different swing on the perception of it. And it's not that I want to fight religion off or people's beliefs or anything like that. But I think we have to weigh all the information. I think we have to look at both sides of the table. I think we are now in a time, especially now in a time, where we must question everyone and everything. It doesn't matter.
Well, it does get into religion with this, because, the Bible talks about, the fallen angels, and they had their way with some women and had offspring from it.
Yeah, and how does an angelic being do that?
I think they were able to shapeshift.
But still, all right. But if you're angelic, then you can become a flesh and blood. Now, I can see if you're angelic and you come out and you're as a mist, or you're as a mist being, like a translucent being who can change his appearance of his face to create an evil face versus a beautiful angel's face, or what you would think a cherub would look like. But when you say that this angelic being could, directly change to flesh and blood,
I don't know about completely flesh and blood. You know what I mean?
Do you think? Not that I want to throw you off on this, but I don't want to lose train of thought, because I'm getting old. Do you think there's a possibility that, in a way, it was a demonic possession using the man's body and entering through him somehow, as we understand succubus could do, or a demonic being could do?
Yeah, it could be.
See, this is how I can make it fascinating, because I go into multi-levels of all this, because I think it's important that we weigh that in part of the information.
Because you're talking about some fallen angels, like 200, and you're talking about extremely intelligent.
Yeah, like I'm telling you,
I don't think they have a soul, but they're still, intelligent, and I think they can do things that we have not even fathomed.
They are the most impressive scientists one could ever want to meet. I mean, I don't know what else to call them. I mean, when you really think about it, there's a science to what they do. And there was one pope who actually came out, and I think he reigned between 1890 something to just early 1903, maybe. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he said, you better reflect science into the religion, because there is a science behind everything as we understand it, because mathematically, that's how we solve most of everything of life, of what we understand of it. There's a math, there's physics, there's quantum. And we're going into all these different narratives. What was the purpose of CERN? We talked about that a little bit this afternoon. I mean, it wasn't an interview with you. It was just us, sitting down with a glass of whiskey and a cigar, saying how we're going to dress tonight. And think about it. Now we're in process 2. What have they developed? What do they know? What don't they want us to know? I think we are, in fact, in a dimension with other things. There's no doubt about it.
Raise mushrooms?
I'm sorry, what?
Do you know how they raise mushrooms?
How they
grow mushrooms?
I have a little bit of a familiarity with it. I know.
You said that what they want us to know. It's kind of like raising mushrooms. keep you in the dark and feed you a lot of shit.
Okay. That's what they do. You're right.
Exactly. I'm serious.
No, I hear you. And that's always been their narrative.
The government's probably 50 years ahead of us, 50 at least.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe more.
Yeah.
To what we know. You know.
And I would say there's some special programs that are probably could probably double that figure on years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, you get one scientist, and this is his thing, and, you know, he gets other scientists, and they all get together, and if they work together, they can really come up with some stuff now.
Well, the problem with scientists, they're all employees of the United States government, unless they're running solo. And there are some solo scientists that are out and work amongst different types of departments. You have Bigelow Industries and just different narratives of different places. And we hire these out, even Elon Musk. I mean, Trump even said it's important that we work with outside resources for technology purposes. Now, technology scares me because how much technology is too much technology? Look at Mars. Something happened. Look at the things that we do. I mean, you know, we could save this world if we shut down nuclear reactors and went to free energy and took a whole different approach to things. And we probably have all the capabilities. But for now, money's still important, even though the cash dollar isn't. Crypto's not even safe. I mean, I don't know if you know about this, but there was $650 million because crypto's fake. And if you hack a crypto system of someone who created crypto and it just disappears, well, so does your investment. And that just happened. $650 million in cryptocurrency vanished, just vanished. And they don't know how, why, and no one's held responsible for it. But
they didn't send it to me.
No, I didn't get none either. And I don't want it. Because if you started to understand who put this narrative of these track and trace systems together, because that's what they truly are, you would never buy it. When it comes out as to who they are, and I talked about this, it'll blow people's minds. But you know, hey, look, that's another narrative on how we can look at what we focus on in the world. And I was out today, as you know, and I had to use I seen some people using a parking meter. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, talk about track and trace. You got to go up to this machine now, you know, which has been out for some years here in Pennsylvania. You got to put your plate number in. So it verifies where your car was between the hours of whatever until you check out. You know what I mean? They know you're there for at least 2 hours because you paid for 2 hours. You go over and you put the tag on your car or whatever. They just go by the machine and they punch your license plate number in it. So these are those track things, just the same as with the debit cards, the early form of track and trace and the conditioning. This is the same thing how they condition people saying that UFOs are a lie. They're conspiracy theorists. Oh, they don't know any better. Just call them a conspiracy theorist. We got to be kind to them to create the narrative to say this: right is wrong and wrong is right. You know. It's the opposite goes. Everything's opposite. Everything we see right now in society, doesn't matter what we talk about. And the shame of it is, no matter what topic it is, no matter what group you're in discussing something or listening to a podcast, we need to stick together and just keep the facts of research, because we're going to be the cure for why we get to the bottom of the truth. One, because we're out there. Two, because we know they are, and they're investing money into the same projects that you're researching, which tells you a lot right there. It's mind-blowing, James. It really is.
Yeah, you talk about tracking. All they have to do is look at your cell phone.
Well, yeah, and who wants a part with that? You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. And, we don't need nothing under the skin. Damn it, we got it in our pocket all day long.
Yeah. And, you know, you go out and go to the grocery store and you reach in your pocket. Oh, crap. My cell phone's on the chargers, or I left it on the desk or something like that. You almost feel, I guess the word is naked, you know, kind of like you left your shoes off or something, you know.
That's why I love coming on doing shows. You know, I never pick up a phone while I'm in the show. I'll look at the show doing, the thing in case for questions and whatnot. Things like that. And tonight I haven't, just because of my setup had to be different tonight. I had to go in and try to make it as positive as I could because of a different reason. When they suppress me, I have to fight back a different direction. So I make them have to look for me. I still.
Well, let me introduce this to the group. Has the group noticed in the last 2 years how many cotton picking commercials are on a TV show now? One after another, and how silly they are. Or is it just me?
No. I mean, you're absolutely right. And the world's even changing into a whole different bi pronoun level of sorts. It's going to get even weirder. I don't know how old you are, James, and I'm not going to ask you to tell me, but I can say this. I'm 63. And some of the things that I'm seeing, I like to think that I've been around the block and I understand. And I do. I don't care what people like. Just don't shove it down my throat. And I think everybody agrees to that. We're not going to change people from who they are or what they want to be. And history knows, God only knows, that they practiced a lot of this same shit that's getting shoved down our throat right now. And that's why they support the narrative of it. Go out and put on a 10 rubbers and tie them to yourself and you're considered dressed. And no, you're not. You're an idiot. You're nothing more than an idiot. And you're embarrassment to your family. But if you go out logically and you want to be a certain somebody, just go out and be a certain somebody and keep treating people with respect. And people will give you the same respect back. Don't shove it down one's throats. I mean, that's why we're falling apart. But, again, it's
I got something for the group. We were talking about Admiral Byrd, going down to Antarctica,
mm-hmm.
and he went into the inner Earth.
Yes.
Do people really think that he went into the inner Earth, or do they think maybe he went through a portal?
Well, see, that's the whole objective that we don't quite understand all of. We know that they're portal. There's claims right now of a tunnel system that they were making. And when they got to a certain point of the tunnel system, it turned into a natural portal. Look on America Disclosing Uncensored on that group that I have. I did post something for that. But you bring up a very, very good question on that. And I wish Jimmy Church was on. I could call him up and say, yo, dude, give me some intel here. But no, I'll give you my hypothesis on this. I think it's very possible. However, I'm going to bring somebody else into the mix. Corey Good. Do you remember that name? He was brought into the mainstream of all this unknown through not David Icke. Let me think of his name. He's another well-known name. Oh, I can see his face in my head. It'll come to me. But anyway, this guy would claim to be in a space program. He's claimed that he was part of the logistics that went to these, we'll call them superficial meetings between different entities of different types of aliens. And it had to do what they called the Galaxia.
Federation thing.
Yeah, the Galaxia Federation and so forth. The Council of the Galaxia.
Yeah, to keep us safe from the Dracos and others.
Right. And he would actually be accompanied to these things and go to them. And he said there was very bizarre looking beings at them. I mean, you have manus beings that basically would probably scare me to high heaven if one stood down. But they say that they are the peaceful ones, the lookers, the ones who look out for life and the universe. And they are the ones that keep happiness and harmony. And that's their desire for us. But anyway, this guy claims that a certain race would come and basically like abduct them. And he always dealt with the same, we'll call it a person. And they were like blue bird-like aliens. And that they took him there to this place, to the hollow earth. And he described an internal sun, an internal type of power source that illuminated everywhere. and where they actually had clouds and sunlight and fruit trees that with the size of fruits, he said everything there was enormous compared to what we grow on the surface of Earth. Maybe because we're poisoning all our soils, and they're doing
we
it.
are.
And
we're tying up the carbon bonding in the soil.
Yes.
With the fertilizers we got, and the only people making money is corporations that are selling this stuff.
The 200 core, yeah, and you see what's going on with that right now. Well, for fertilizer, it's gone up 4, 5, 6 folds. To plant corn this year in the United States of America is going to be, I mean, you're going to be paying $25 for a dozen ears of corn, or if you're lucky enough to get the lucky 13. What do they call the baker's dozen? You know, take your 13.
Well, look how much money they're going to be making, because if they were making money in the past, like on gas, look what gas has gone to. And if they were making money in 2019, 2018, so on, what are they making on it now?
Oh, they're making a fortune.
Almost double. Yeah.
First off, it's free. It's coming from our God-given rights for mankind. It should not be one person's, because you know what? Because they reach down and they tap into it. It can go into 50 states. That source, pocket source of oil, you know, that lasts for years and years and years, and it's uncanny when you think about it. But I mean, you know, it becomes one man's. And one man becomes the power source, and one man becomes the owner of the power grids. And when you get into those type of ideologies, when you look at the things like that, we're in a sad place when we look at, you know, the globe. This isn't about America.
No.
It's about us, but it's a global problem.
He went in and he talked to the master, and they were the keepers of the earth. And they told him they didn't like the nukes that went off in Japan. And he talked about it. He told him when he got back, but who knows what. And like James Forrestal, you know, he sent, you know, Admiral Byrd, Nimitz, and some other guy, Kirshner, or something like that. He was an admiral. They sent him down.
Yeah.
And then Forrestal was talking about it when he got back. And, you know, the rest about him is history. Put him in Walter Reed,
and you know what?
Made it out alive.
And you know what else is fascinating about that trip? Usually ships are decommissioned.
Yeah.
And there's paperwork to do that. It's just like a soldier. Well, we have military ships missing from that event, and guess what?
Pine Island.
We know that their names existed.
Yeah,
but we have no more paper trail on them. We have an opening to the story, but we have no closure. They just went MIA.
Yeah, the catapult ship called Pine Island. It went to be decommissioned and sold for scrap iron. But, whoopsie, there's no paperwork on it.
Right.
So you tell me what was going on with that.
Well, you know what, in some cases, I could say there could be a paper slip up or a name change for whatever a purpose may be. But there's too many trips. There's too many apples falling from the tree that suggest other things. And that's why I say.
Well, they did Operation High Jump, and then 10 years later, and from then on, they did Operation Deep Freeze.
Yeah. And, you know, they do describe the Antarctic. And then when you listen to Linda Moulton Howe, I think she talked to Spartan 1 and Spartan 2. They were soldiers that were down there. And they said the subs would come in under the glacier, and there was an opening, and it would come into a subterranean type of docking system that had its own power source of illuminating light. It was mildly temperatured at around 70 degrees. There were rooms acres big that had no supports in them. And it was all made from lava rock. You know, I don't know if you've listened to Linda on some of her interviews that she did with Spartan 1 and Spartan 2. I believe they are Spartus 1 and Spartus 2. But I thought they were quite fascinating. I didn't hear anything in their voice that said to me there was any irregularities about what they were speaking on. And she's a rock star, man. I mean, if anybody was the big gold bar, the biggest diamond on earth, it's Linda. I mean, this woman gave up and didn't give up anything. She created more stardom for herself and will be acknowledged for it at another time and date for sure. But I mean, she's brought so much to the forefront for all of us on these typical subjects and UFOs and cattle mutilations and more. And she's award winning. I mean, she's a rock star scholar, quote. I mean,
well, the thing about it, she has really brought some information to light.
She did it when it was a danger zone too.
Unheard of.
Yeah.
Unheard of, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm surprised somebody didn't put a bullseye on her forehead.
That is amazing in a way. You know what I mean? I mean, look what they're doing to WikiLeaks for him bringing out stuff, which some even pertain to a different technology of a different race. I'll say it that way. Dave Icke speaks on things of that nature. Julian Assange, as I said. And then you have the other one who hacked. Two who hacked. There was a guy from Britain who hacked that got in, found out a lot of stuff about the special intelligence space program. And
let me interrupt you on this.
Go ahead.
You know what they should have done with this guy?
Which
they should have hired him.
You talking about Julian Assange?
Because if he was that good to do what he did by himself outside, what in the world could he do working for him?
I hear you, but there's one other one that was working within the deep state government too, and programs. Then he went to Russia. Russia was hiding him, giving him what do they call sovereignty or whatever they call that word?
Yeah.
What was that kid's name? He was a younger fella. And he hacked the systems too on him, and he gave up a lot of paper. Well, I know for a fact that there was some very interesting phone calls while Trump was in office. Very interesting phone calls. And there was very interesting directions on how to look and navigate through a few things, because this is when all the information broke loose. When a couple of these fellows had the information, and the deep state went nuts about it. All these people and the black ops and, special intelligence systems that we have in America and so forth. And they want these guys dead. And the one kid's still out there. I can see his face. That's the thing about it. Why can't I remember his name? And in my third eye, I could see this kid's face. And you know what? He's a very well-spoken kid, too. He's very intelligent.
Well, you have to be to do what you would do what he did. I mean, let's face it.
And, he's right.
Dum-dum.
And he has spoke on things. Without a doubt. And I really do believe that the last administration had some very interesting intel from the conversations with Julian Assange and that other young fellow who I can't think of his name. And it's going to come to me the minute we go off the air. That's just how things work.
You walk into a room and, then you think of something.
Yeah, I know. I try to do all that thinking all the time. So when are we going to get together again? I'm hoping we can build a nice little platform, like, just like one of those nice little talk radio shows where we get together and just have a big hoedown together.
Yeah, anytime you want, because there's 1,000,001 subjects as long as the MIB don't come knocking on our doors.
Oh, I know, like crop circles, life on the moon.
Yeah.
I mean, there's.
Why did China? Let me ask you a question, and the readers or listeners. Why did China go on the dark side of the moon instead of this side? Why did they land on the one particular spot on the dark side of the moon?
Yeah, I know.
And what about Apollo 18, 19, and 20?
Well, I'm going to tell you. Those. You know what? We never made it there when they said we made it there. That was all. In my mind, everything that I found out, all the things that I've seen, the astronauts talked to, the consequences that came out for a couple of people's actions. Like We had some people that went to them and said, "Hey, will you swear on a Bible that you were at the moon?" And they looked at him and wanted to die. Like, he says, "All right, look, I'll make it even better. I'll give you $5,000. Put your hand on a Bible and swear that you went to the moon." And no one would do it. They just say, "Get away from me, get away from me." And then why did they take Buzz Aldrin to the Antarctic? Because they did.
You broke up there.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said, why did they take Buzz Aldrin to the Antarctic?
I don't know.
Well, about, I don't know, 3-4 years ago.
That would be a good incentive for some of these scientists that say they can't do this and they can't do that. How would you like to spend a year or two in Alaska or the Antarctic? Kind of like Russia does with Siberia.
I truly believe we're there. I truly believe we have government programs there. I do believe that we have special treaties. We might be at war with the world, but when it comes to certain facts, we have treaties where we allow people to commingle together and work together scientifically and in the research and discovery field as well. And I think that's what they're doing deep under there, because the Russian Pope went there. John Kerry went there. Obama went there. Buzz Aldrin.
Yeah, why did he go there? Because he was president?
Well, I can emphasize this way, in case you don't know about it. Some papers came from the Vatican to the Russian Pope that were sent over because they had some type of device. It was called the Ark of Gabriel.
Yeah.
There's more than one ark that the books tell us about. And this was it. And they didn't know how to deal with it. And the Vatican had the papers, which I think the Templars got from the Library of Alexandria prior to them setting it on fire. Because at one point in time, when the Templars, in my mind, when they found out that Christianity was a corporation for money, the Templar says we can do the same thing, but we don't have to believe in your religion. You can stick with your paganism, and we're going to stick with Christianity. And that's what they did. And that's why they started protecting the relics. And that's what Oak Island's all about, and the theory there, the Portuguese Templars. Because, when they were all being burnt, I mean, how do you take one of the strongest holds of a military that did nothing but good for you and brought you back riches and rewards? Because convincingly enough, the Vatican, the Republic of Rome, who is the Vatican, says, look, we're better than everybody else. We have to secure our bloodline. And these types of things occurred, and the Templars were in on it for a while until they decided, nah, we can work with our own system. We can guarantee people safe passage. People used this was the first mechanism of a bank. The Templars would take money from you or I and say, when you get to where you're going, you hand them this note, you'll get all but $3 out of your 100. And people would do that. They would go there, they would give the paper, they would get every bit, except for the surcharge. Because in traveling, so many people were being attacked and killed because it was just that time, place and time. The Vikings, everybody running rampant on people, the Danes, people sword fighting, and, the world was a mess even then in the Dark Ages. So they at least knew if they survived the trip, their money was going to be on the other side. Not all of it, because there was a charge. And that was how banking, and the Vatican didn't care for it. And
they wanted to control.
They wanted the control. They wanted all the goods. They wanted all the jewels. They wanted all the money. And they wanted them to kill, kill, kill. They didn't find killing necessary unless it became necessary. And the Vatican said, kill, kill, kill. And they said, no. Killing happens when it becomes necessary only. And that was the breakup. And then they, what was it? That special Friday 13th.
Friday 13th.
That's why everybody looks at that date. You and I are a pretty good source of information. We could probably stay on here for about 10 hours. I think Art Bell would have liked this. But no, I mean, in all honesty, they put these guys, they burn them. So there's another source. Where's all these riches? We know that the Vatican never got it all.
Oh, Colin.
There could be a possibility that that's true.
I believe there is something there. What? I don't know.
Well,
I think they're going about it the wrong way.
Yeah, I've theorized around it too, but what do I know? It's not my millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. This is not cheap. They're spending a lot of money on a gamble, but you have to think about this also. We had
there's something there.
There was presidents there.
I'm firmly convinced.
Listen, I really believe the high up 33 and above Masonic Masons definitely have information of something, because the Templars came from different divisional platforms, because the Templars were the builders, you know, the modern age builders, if you want to really so call them the modern age builders. They weren't the builders of the pyramids. I mean, we're talking about a whole different structure of humanity that goes back that we don't quite understand, because so much is suppressed. But I think
don't they say there's 7 races that were here before us?
7 races of giants. They were all giants, and they were mega giants. Now, I want you to think about what you just said there too, which narrates that mind bending that I like to do. How big were they to be able to survive so well in a world of dinosaurs?
Pretty good size.
Exactly, and which makes sense too, because when you look at the Egyptian hieroglyphs and stuff, where you see a person carrying an adult human as if it's a child, and a full-grown 600-pound lion in the other arm, as beastly as they can be and as deadly as they can be, they were like kitty cats to them.
Yeah.
You know, a cat of normality that we see, house cat today, that's swatted like a fly. You know, and then here's something else of interest too. You know, we see all these elongated skulls that identify a lot of things. Okay, you know, I have something that came to light through somebody about, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago. I was talking to somebody 15 years before that. Guy used to come in my gas station. I'm not going to throw the name out there because he's a big name. He's no longer with us, but just, I can't help it that he was from Pittsburgh and bought gasoline where I worked. But the truth of the matter was, we were talking one day. He said, when you start looking at these skulls, I want you to keep something in mind that I think is going to come out. You might be looking at some early Bigfoot skulls. They're not all going to be humanoid. He told me that. And when I look at the skulls and I look deep into them, I do see that ancestral type of what you think if you could do. I don't know. I do chainsaw carvings, and I'm not the best. Okay. But I do study the bodies and faces, the, what do you call it? Begins with an A. Anatomy.
Anatomy?
Yeah, the anatomies and facial structures. I looked at a couple skulls the other day that they were saying that they dug up, and they didn't have an answer for what they were yet. And I swear to God to you, if you would put a wide bridge nose, and, you know, I mean, it had the cranium of the skull of what we would expect to see as a Bigfoot. So I think we're actually seeing some proofs already. They're just not coming out and saying it, because grants pay scientists. Grants through the government support archaeology. But why do they do it? They only supported archaeology in these other countries because they wanted their hands on certain things all the time. I mean, when we went into Iraq and went and did this, and when we went and did that, we were going, and while they were claiming that the enemy was destroying the museums and all the artifacts, we were actually collecting them, packing them, and flying them into the United States or to some country. They were landing somewhere else. They were taking everything of importance out of that country, and they wanted it. You know, they wanted these things. And it makes me wonder, is that what 9/11 was truly all about? A hidden technology or information that these people, because bloodline, rich, their religion, what works for them, is the probability of why that all took place and why we needed to go in and strong arm the country.
Well, I heard that too, that they were looking for Nirvana. You know, the flying Indian ships.
The Vamana.
Manana.
Yeah. Well, that's in a way too, that which I brought up earlier. And if I didn't, maybe we talked about it at another point in time, was the fact of what Barb Lazar was talking about. These ancient crafts, that one was an archaeology find. And then here, something else that he mentioned that blew my mind that I watched a few months ago. Maybe it was a little more than that. These things that we're hearing about, this contaminant that everybody's been getting ill from. Do you know he was using the words, scientifical words of ufology that matched them? He was talking about corona.
Oh, I see what you're getting at. Yeah.
He was talking about, and I don't want to like say over too much because some people do turn you in just because you're giving them good, valid information. I joke not with you. I'm going to look for this little tidbit that I had, and I sent it to a few people, and I was like, listen to this guy. And I don't want you to listen to the theory of what he's speaking about. Everything he was bringing up. Now, listen, this didn't even happen when he did this interview. They were already.
Yeah, I heard they were too early on releasing it, and then Trudeau and what he did in Canada was way too early for what he did. It upset their apple cart, time-wise.
Yeah, because they go on a different timeline than us. They actually follow this. And a 13th-month astrology, okay? And you'll never know what that 13th one, because it represents who they bow to. So there's 13 constellations, there's 13 astrology, which we know for a fact now. We found proof that did exist. One point in time, they changed the narrative. For whatever reason, I don't truly know, and I haven't talked to any really good historians or anybody that looks into it that would be willing to talk to a regular Joe like me. I don't get 100,000 views per show. I mean, I just don't. So they're not going to talk to me. But it doesn't mean that I can't stop my own, research and educating myself the best I can. But it was 13 months at 28 days. It equaled 365 days in a year. And we found this in a temple, right on a wall in a temple. And I had a young lady on out of Canada. I can't remember her name. And if I could, she's upset with me for some godforsaken reason. She hasn't talked to me. I wish her all the best, though. I don't know what the issue was. But she quit talking to me. And I think it was because when I brought up things that she didn't know about like this, because she was talking about the 12 months and tarot cards and all this stuff. And I was like, well, what about the 13th one? Well, there is no 13th one. Well, there was a 13th one, but they changed our timeline. They changed it. They recategorized it. April, the 1st of April, during Easter, is actually the first month of the year. The first givings of the year. The birth of everything. Life, as we know, is spring, the solstice, and how everything works that way. And the dialogues work that way if you use the 13 months. You know, like when they build certain things and they say the light comes into the certain time of the year? There's certain points it doesn't work because we're not using the 13th month.
You're not getting out.
I'm sorry?
You didn't get out.
I'm not sure what you meant. I'm not getting out. You mean I'm missing you, or?
It's not, you're talking, but it's not, it wasn't broadcasting.
Oh, hold on a second here. You mean I'm not coming over on the broadcast, his voice?
Yeah, it wasn't for a few seconds there after you got past the 13th.
Well, you know what, man? That might be them just playing with my satellite feed. Who knows? Give me 1 second here.
It could be Big Brother, yeah. He keeps an eye on us.
Well, I do talk about a lot of bad stuff. I want to say hi to Ernie Duvall, who's been in. Pete's been in. Oh my God, look at all these people. Let me give them all. Snowden, that's the name. Thank you so much. You remember Snowden?
Yeah.
He was the other one. Thank you so much, guys. Bettina Moss has been in. Bettina, I hope you shared this. Get it out to everybody you can.
Yeah, she asked, what are we talking about here? She came in late.
Everything.
Gary asked, do you believe that UFOs and USOs are one and the same? I don't see why not. If they can go into outer space and go into our air, why not go into the water? Same propulsion system.
Oh yeah. Yeah, without a doubt.
They don't use wings and tail rudders and things like that, like all of our pilots are used to. They can turn on a dime and not affect them within the ship. It puts them in a separate bubble.
Exactly. It's there's a frequency of something that they can definitely control the physics of the atmosphere. It's like they can slide between anything. And now if you can imagine that, imagine why that's the same reason why they can do it within the water.
Yeah, it's the same thing. And it wouldn't be any resistance to them.
None.
Just like air wouldn't be resistance. I was watching something the other day, and they calculated the speed, and it went 28,000 miles an hour.
Right. I got to get Lou Alexandro, I'm sorry, on the show. I got to get him on. I hear he does shows whether somebody's got 5 people's listening just because he's that kind of guy. I'm going to swing out. I'm going to try to get him on. I really do, because I know he would just be a rock star to have on. He has good information. There's a lot of things that he can't talk about. I mean, when he gave his word as a soldier and as a patriot to work within certain governmental programs, and he lives up to that. A lot of people are a little bit dismayed with the fact that he's not maybe giving enough information, and I think he gave a lot. And one of the other things I want to say is we already know it exists. These things exist. Now, the problem is, whose are they? Ours or theirs? And if it's theirs, how many of theirs are there? There's books out there that say there's as many as 56 entities, alien entities. I don't know. The possibility of that could be possible. And what do they look like?
Why not? They trade, and they can go from star system to star system, or star to star, planet to planet, rather. And they got to talk among each other, just like sailors have since they've been traveling the seas. And you ought to see what I saw over in Spain or something, or down in Mexico. They got all this gold down there, and they've got to talk among themselves. And if there's no money exchanged, in their society, they hop in their little spacecraft and fuel up and take a trip. Yeah, we'll see the Earthlings. We'll watch them blow each other up. It's funny.
Yeah, since the beginning of time, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
and who knows? They might have been here before we were.
Oh, you know what? Something happened. Yeah, without a doubt, because there's no other way to look at things when you look at things. And part of that picture is the entirety of the artwork within all the objects that were built. The pyramids being so mathematically perfect that match frequencies and everything else. What is it, 430? Yeah. And one of the things, though, that I have a hard time understanding, the Van Allen belt, this radiational belt, how are they getting through all that? Or is that
shielded? Just like the old Star Trek movies,
we get
the new ones.
The skin of the craft.
Force field around them.
Yeah, or the skin of the craft, because that's how they do it with the certain high altitude planes that, like the Aurora that we have now, that has capabilities that no one's allowed to talk about, and a couple other different secret planes out there. But then you hear some narratives from people who claim that they were involved in some of these early beginnings. And I can tell you this, we're right on the money on everything we're talking about as far as the diversity and time of how much further they truly are ahead of us. It's just, where did it all come from? How did it all just happen? That's the weird part. It's the same thing when you talk to a guy like Bigelow, and you say to him, "How far do you have to go to find life outside of the Earth?" And he said, whether it's
You don't have to go anywhere.
Exactly. So, and now Skinwalker Ranch has just come back on. I caught some of the show the other day. It looks like it's going to be really intriguing. A lot of more mysteries, and they intend to get to the bottom of it the best that they can, until maybe the government shuts it down. Like when they took Project Blue Book was a good TV show.
Yes, it was.
It was interesting enough, but were they too much right that it just had to? There's no way they didn't have the Watchers. They had the Watchers.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about angels. They had us. They had us watching. It was intriguing. There was honesty in it, but were they too much on the money? And that was the issue and narrative of the say.
I think they were. Yeah, I think they were.
And I think it's
here again. We come back to these movies that have hidden agenda in them, and you just have to watch. I like watching them for the scenes, the special effects, so to speak.
Right.
And they do have hidden agendas, whether it be Close Encounters or Rock's new one.
And then look at him in his old ones, where he was the Serpent King or something.
Yeah,
I mean,
evidently there was a Serpent King back in Egypt.
Yes. Everything reflects these kinds of narratives. They're all fed in as information conditioning. This is where that new religion that Obama probably talked about, saying we will have a new religion. The Vatican says it too, and then the Vatican also said, "I will baptize aliens." This is things not from my own thought. This is things coming from people's mouths. It's mind blowing, but that's why I like it.
Yeah.
That's why I love it. James, we've been on for almost 2.5 hours, man. I think it's time.
When you're having fun.
Oh, exactly. I can't. I don't know if I'm going to be able to wait another 30 days to do this, but I enjoy it. And that's fine by me too. I don't want to put any pressure on anybody. Although, people could get out there and rant and say more. I would get it. I would totally get it. And I would try to do whatever I could, because there's so much we didn't even land on in all this tonight. And I do want to do some Dogman segments. Most of the people that are around me, and I'm not saying they're all Bigfoot. They're not. It's just nobody wants to come on the air. There are some people that come on the air, but I haven't really been able to reach out to them to get good correspondences back. I've sent some invites out, things like that. Hey, it's Michael Anthony. Would you have any interest coming on, giving us some story time, and let's just talk shop? And, it's been a little different of a different narration for me on the side. It's like the Dogman people were saying, he's Bigfoot. He's not all about Dogman. Well, that's not true. I'm about everything. I'm about the Colburn Bible. I'm about, real people having a good time.
No, I believe there's both. I believe there's Dogman. I think they have come into their own. And about the mutilations that have gone across the country. Tazewell County, Virginia, and Buchanan County, Virginia, Cobb County, Tennessee, even Meade County in Kentucky, Meade County has had their own. And then even in around me, a couple counties over, Monroe County, this poor old guy came home and 3 of his horses were dead. And I later called, I won't say who I called, but I talked to someone that should know, and they told me that besides the 3 horses, there were 15 cows that were attacked, and 1 cow was killed.
Yeah, they're not all being done by our assumption of saying military or alien. There's something else at work here.
Yeah, Bigfoot, he would break their neck or break their backs, break them in half, and he has no reason to just kill one and leave it laying. If he were hungry, he would have carried it off.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and,
I get it.
When I was little, my grandparents had a farm not too far from us, and there was a cow that had a calf, and of course they do like we did. They put it in a stall, open stall. The barn roof went over like a patio, and it had gates where the cows couldn't get out, but it was still in that stall. And I don't know if it was a bobcat or a mountain lion or whatever, but it went in there, and I think the cow went after the bobcat or whatever it was to get it away from the cat. And that poor old cow's belly looked like it went through a lawnmower, a rototiller or something. But these deaths over in these horses over in Monroe County, I saw a picture, and it wasn't anything like that. And of course, everybody's hush-hushing.
Yeah, well, when don't they? When don't they?
Yeah, that's what really irritates you.
Well, the problem is it's all suppression. I mean, whether we're talking about, the lands and land bridges breaking apart and how the Antarctic used to be warm and now it's in this desolate tundra of cold, icy air, that goes to 80 below zero.
Well, what about that land map they had back in Columbus days that shows Antarctica without an inch of ice on it?
The Perry Reese map. Well, look at Captain Cook in 1772. He was one of the most genius navigators and researchers who was creating his own maps. No one talks about Captain Cook. They just think, he was the villain. Well, maybe in ways he was, but he enjoyed sailing. He enjoyed going places, and he found out things about the world that are just, pretty impressive, actually. I'll just leave it that way because I'd like to bring more up on some of these things, like you said, when we talk about original maps and so forth. But I really do think that we had a devastation that's a little different than what the Bible had deciphered. On the 40 days, 40 night rain, we flooded. And I'm not
saying a lot. That doesn't mean actually 40 days, 40 nights. The translation means a lot.
Well, because, and in some ways, when they say a day, it actually means years.
Yeah.
Right, so I do...
And who said it was all rain? What if the polar caps melted?
Well, I have an analogy to that, and I shared it with other people. I'll share it with you, though. This is my analogy to it, because it is getting late, and I got to get up at like 5:30 tomorrow, do some work and whatnot, but that's okay. I'm not in no rush. But I do want to get kind of like through this if I can, or maybe we should just save it for the next time. I don't know.
Save it for the next time.
Because it is really good. I want to, but I do, let me do this. I hope I leave you on a cliffhanger. Is that what they call it in the movies? Cliffhangers. Let's keep you on the cliffhanger because we want you back because honestly, we have a lot of fascinating topics. And look, sometimes we talk about everything on the broadcast, and it's fun to do it. With me tonight, all night, has been James Wigginton, a phenomenal researcher and of many different topics, as you just heard for yourself. Keeps himself educated well, watches everything.
Well, remember my education level. The third grade.
Third grade. Well,
yeah, I was the only kid in third grade had a license.
Well, you know what? Maybe you have a third grade education, and if that's the case, you're still smarter than Biden.
Oh God, yes. My lab over there is snoring away. She's smarter than him.
Well, you're gonna have to.
Let me rephrase that. Let me give him a little credit.
All right.
I hate that, but I think he's being told what to do.
Oh, I've come to that. I call it Joe Obama. That's my narration is Joe Obama.
Maybe a few others,
Yeah, sure.
Poor guy. Because let's face it, to be elected official like that, no matter what level, whether we're going through local elections here, and whether it's a presidential election, a local election, it still takes an enormous amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
And most of these people, they just haven't got that much money.
But he didn't spend no money. He didn't spend no money. He did it from his basement.
Yeah, I know. But somebody did, though.
Well,
somebody had the manpower to do what he did.
Yeah, Zuckerberg, man, with the drop boxes and the 2,000 mules
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Stacey Abrams, and the fact that she owned a company that employed certain types of individuals. Yeah, I know. Don't get me going there. I have a show on. It's called America in Crisis on Friday nights, and sometimes I get in trouble there too. But again,
You know what? I thought of a show after we got talking today. I thought of something the other a few minutes after that, and it's scenario: Wake Up, America.
well, you know what? I had that show on in the mornings back in the early parts when this happened, but it wasn't called Wake Up America. It was called Waking Up with Michael Anthony. Had a big sunshine because we didn't have any sunshine. It was a big cup of coffee once I found out Gates owned part of Starbucks and synthetic blends, which means they're actually chopping trees up, pieces of certain types of wood, believe it or not, and grinding it and dyeing it with this synthetic flavoring. And when you go home, so this doesn't happen in the natural beans. When you pour the beans out of a bag and you put them through a grinder in the store, but the ones that are already pre-packed and stuff, these guys are like up to so much shit. It's mind-boggling, you know?
Well, you being a carpenter, me being a carpenter, we've probably eaten more than our share of sawdust.
I still got it in my eyes. It never leaves.
Yeah. That's why I couldn't wear contacts.
Yeah, I hear you. Boy, I'm paying the price for some of those mistakes. Because when you do carve, those chips do go flying. But again, it depends upon what type of wood you're using. And if you're using the softer pines and cedars, then it's a lot easier to work with. But when you get into the hardwoods, the job is tenfold harder. It just is tenfold harder, and you kill your chains.
Got several scars to show that.
Oh yeah, me too, man. I'm not going to show you any though. My scars are all in bad places. I'm not showing anybody.
Finger on my right hand, when I hold my hand out, it goes down.
Oh,
the doctor said another half inch, I would have never been able to reconnect that tendon.
Oh, you mean you had your rotacuff fixed? They didn't fix both mine.
I had both. No, this is the tendon that goes to from the arm into the baby finger. I cut it right there where the artery is.
Yeah.
Only time I've ever passed out from loss of blood. No, I've had both my rotator cuffs done. My bicep teared.
Yeah, I had that too. I had the bicep, but they couldn't. They fixed the bicep. They couldn't fix the rotacuffs. They said they were massive, non-repairables.
Yeah, and mine ain't worth a hoot.
Yeah, well, I actually, you know what? It's been like 12 years. I'm starting to get my hands over my head now.
Oh, I still can't. I can do it for half a minute.
Yeah,
45 seconds at the most.
Yeah, well, see, I get where you're at. My problem was in two areas: going directly overhead and the outer reach, like as a craning. So if I would reach out even for a glass of beer, I'd have to adjust my whole body to pick up the beer to bring it over to me. To ask me to pick up a gallon of milk? No. I mean, you have to position your body and your new anatomy because it becomes new, because other muscles are trying to compensate for you to get back to where you were somehow to help you do what you want to do. So my two are gone totally. They went into one side, they scoped me up and down and said they didn't have any way to do it. They didn't want to use catgut. They said it was not worth it because they wouldn't be able to do a full attachment. And then they said to me, how else did they put it? There was another way. Reverse.
Screws?
No, they wanted. They couldn't do the reverse procedure. So here I have two that are like that. But one of the weirdest things I ever did, stupidest things, because of a big bee, by the way. I want to make sure that I have clarity out there so I get the story straight. But you know what a table saw is, and you're running wood through a table saw?
Oh, yeah.
So you do have a guard, and it keeps the dust from coming up in your face. Now, this was an older machine, all right? But it worked fine.
Take mine off.
What was that?
I take mine off.
Yeah. Well, it wouldn't have mattered if I did or didn't. So I'm guiding this piece of wood through instead of using like I made a tool for the one side, so it would your fingers aren't close to the blade. Well,
Right.
this bee swoops down by my face, and I see it, and I
Oh.
blow. No, I blow it away, and I turn my head. I'm still okay. I'm still okay. I must have had my mouth open and not realizing what I did. And I'm guiding it. It was a long piece of wood. I needed it so long by so thin and I had to rip a piece of wood down to do it. And he comes and he like hits the side of my lip, and I just threw my hands out in front of me and went right into the blade, and it split my finger straight up. I mean, it annihilated it. So I got out the super glue after I got the blood to quit, and I got brave enough to look at it, because at first I wasn't. I just knew it was that bad by the pouring of the blood that I had to get the finger completely, wrapped up. I called my kid up. I said, "Hey, look, before I take a look at this, just so you know, you might have to come up here and get me just in case, because I don't know if it's going to spurt blood. I don't know what it's going to do." So anyway, I hung up with him. I go on the the table, and I start unwrapping it, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, oh my God. But I got out the super glue. I got out the not duct tape, electrical tape, wrapped it all up, kept it like that for a week, took it off. It was all black and blue, never got infected. And I did pour peroxide on it, and it stung like a bitch. But I mean, if you look at my finger right now, you'd never know I did it. So I did a better job than going to the hospital.
Should have put honey on it.
What's honey do?
Honey is antiseptic. Bacteria will not grow in honey. Honey never decomposes, never rots.
Well, I've heard that, but I didn't know it was good for an injury.
Yeah. The Egyptians and Romans and Greeks, they all put honey on wounds.
So you never cease to amaze me, man. You keep me right in the game.
Yeah.
You keep me right in the game. Thank you for that.
It's been around for a couple, 3,000 years or longer. Who knows?
Well, yeah, and it's used like almost as a natural antibiotic with garlic too, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it's like maggots. People think, oh, that's nasty. And this is where England is far ahead of us, is that people have certain wounds, especially older people, on their feet, and antibiotics won't cure them. And so what they do, they have maggots, but they're sterile maggots. They have been bred, in containers to be sterile. And then they come out, and when these little bitty maggots, put them on a gauze and put them on their foot, and they eat all the infection. And a lot of people wounds have been cured by that method.
And China,
antibiotics won't do it.
And China uses fish for that, detoxing and cleaning the feet of poisons or whatever. You know about those, right?
Yeah. Because evidently there's a whole science down there about the feet. About pressure points and so on and so forth. Yin and yang, so to speak.
Yeah, what do they call that? Holistic healing?
Yeah,
and
holistic healing, yeah.
Our lost information of medicines. Lost information of medicines. Incredible, man. Wow, dude.
Ernie said a thing, pure honey is hard to get. Only if you don't know a beekeeper.
I do know of one. And, that's another thing. It's shameful. But, I mean, I get it. Everyone needs to make a buck. And I'm not coming down on the honeybee makers. You guys deserve your money. I support you. I get that. But when I go out and see some of these honeys that aren't even real honey, you know what I mean? And that's what they're trying to knock it off with. They're putting honey and little bears and all this stuff. And you go to the store and it says honey on it until you read the back of the label. And then you see some things that say bioengineered. I was eating M&Ms one day, the mini M&Ms. There was something about the flavor. I liked them. So every once in a while, I'm a diabetic, but if I treat myself to something here and there, I wouldn't be human if I wasn't, but I'm happy with where I'm at. I got everything working as good as it can work. So, I look at the back of the package. I don't even know why. And it said that they were flavored with this, that, the other, and bioengineered ingredients. And I'm like, I wanted to spit it out on the floor. What the hell am I eating? What the hell's bioengineered candy? You know, what am I eating?
Scary. Yeah.
But look, if you read the back of packages now, you're going to see a lot more.
yeah.
It says bio. They this plant based, this bio bug base. I mean, that's what they want us to get rid of the meat, create bug base, and you know,
and it ain't cheap either.
No.
You know that?
And then they're printing meat now with blood. And you ought to see it. You ought to see how good it looks. It's
I know it.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
And I've seen the price too. They're crazy.
I know.
Of course, the groceries have gone through the roof, you know.
Yeah, everything has. And they lied when they say it's only a little under 10, it's like 8%. No, there's people charging $1, $2 more for a product across the board. Everybody jumped on this bandwagon. Everybody is taking advantage, and this administration's doing nothing to handle it. Neither is our state representatives in the states who said we weren't going to allow price gouging. You know, before Trump left, that article of enforcement was starting to happen. The minute that Trump did leave, it all went away. Oh, we're going to make gas prices go down. We're going to release millions of barrels of reserves that Trump paid for pennies on the dollar. And we go to the gas station for about a whole week and a half. It dropped 5 cents. Now it's higher than it was before. And that's a fact.
Sure.
That's a fact. So what they do, they depleted it. And then I got a message from a young lady, because I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, I think. And she said they also sent oil overseas. What are you sending our oil over?
That's crazy.
You know, it's costing them more to refine it here now that they shut down most of the United States, number one. And then with the price of to fill up a tractor, a semi-trailer, to come out and deliver the goods. Now it's costing a guy who used to pay $300 to fill up his tanks. You know, around $600-700. One guy had a thing up that was in a Canada trucking thing that was going on. I think he said he paid $1,500 for fuel to fill up his tanks. And
I saw that.
God bless these guys that are out there that gave up the time and money and effort. But, you know, the saddest part about that is I don't see any place that it got us any place better. I say take the trucks to Texas. If you can't have a wall, be the wall. Get our trucks down to Texas.
You know what they should have done? Instead of gone to wherever they went to in Canada or went to Washington, D.C., just park the trucks at home. That way they wouldn't have used any gas or diesel.
I got in trouble for saying that.
Oh, did you? Oh.
I got in trouble for saying that. I said, look, I'm with you guys, but think about the money you save and the fact that all you had to do was keep your keys hanging up at the door and say no and do exactly what you're doing. Don't work. And unless more of us get together and stand strong together, we're not going to make a difference, because it's going to take every one of us for them to understand how strong we are and what it's going to take for them to come at us. And I think they're going to think twice at that point. But it's going to take 300 million people to say no. Because if we shut it all down and we control the narrative, we will control what works in America. They will not, because we will no longer be answering to them. When there's no one in the office to answer the phone, who do they control? Nobody.
Yeah, but I don't think that ever happened.
No, because people fear the fact that, in the long run, I'm going to lose my house. I'm going to lose my car. Look, if we make the world better, no one's going to lose anything.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. We're going to protect each other so no one loses, that everybody sustains and keeps what they have. But it's going to take it to that point. Do you really see any other means of saying we can make this all go away tomorrow? How do we do it? Do you know? Because I don't.
There's no other way that I know of. The only thing we can do is either grin and bear it and take it, or like what you're saying,
shut it all down.
Enough is enough.
Everyone has to do it, and let the ones who believe in all the other ideologies go run around naked through the woods and the cities on the rainbow painted streets for them, or whatever the hell, or whoever the hell they are, or whatever the hell they want. And God bless them. Let them do it. Let them go to and live in the state of California and be with Pelosi and Newsom, them two morons down there. Let them have it. Let them deal with it. While the rest of the United States says, we disown you and we're going to control our own narrative here. And that's, I mean, who's going to come at us? Think about it.
But here's the thing. If they go to California, there'll be the few that are there, because from what I understand, they're leaving there like in droves.
Well, now they are. Yeah, it has been going on, and now so even more. But remember, these were the people with the forefront. When this all took place, you've seen all the housewives of California and the housewives of this. They were all out there. You had the old women from the show. I can't think of the show. Turner's ex-wife. She's going to jail every weekend in Washington, talking about how corrupt the right is.
Oh, you mean Jane Hanoi?
Jane Fonda. Yeah, Fonda.
Yeah, Hanoi. Don't forget that. Fonda.
Yeah. But I mean, so this is their narrative. How big is it? What do they got? A couple million people? So what? Keep them. What are you going to do against 300 million that are saying no to this? It's mind-boggling, but no, really. I mean,
it's like we were talking earlier. Even the talk shows don't get along.
No, they don't.
So,
and everything we see it seems
shame.
Right, and everything.
Shame.
It is a shame, and everything that we see is just a focal of narrative, and I really feel bad for a lot of the disappointing people who think that there is a letter out there that's going to give them the best news of their life very soon, very shortly. It's coming. We had to change the plan. Or some of the people that are out there on YouTube that are, feeding this whole friend. Oh, hey, we got a new financial system. It's just about in place. It's everybody's going to be rich. We're all going to be wealth. I mean, the shit that was flying out there that they all, I mean, if they get one view, that would be a lot right now. But for some godforsaken reason, people are into this narrative, and I'm not going to fall into that because I know for a fact it's coming from one source, one land source. They are controlling us by having us think we know how to keep them at bay. First off, we'll put them in lockdown, and we'll give them a story that says this fascinating alphabetic letter is going to come out, and he's going to give all this stuff about how the military is going to come and it's going to wait. Yeah, well, it's almost 2 years later. What happened? What happened? When's it all? Look, I want it to happen as bad as everybody, and I don't want to say to people, look, believe what you need to believe, but I can't believe it because, there's nobody coming to save us. And if you think that you don't have the tools to save yourselves and save us, as if we do it all as one and one for all, you're sadly mistaken, because that's how it works. That's the cure. The cure is you. You are the cure. When you have enough strength to stand up to everything that this government stands for and against that hurts you. And unless you do it, the best way I can say is the same way Uncle Ted would say, give yourself your own middle finger, because you're as dumber is. Because listen, there's no change coming. The change is the focus of the election, and you better get there, protect the vote, because that seems to be the only factor that's honorable to make the difference. Why would they want to start commissioning different types of measures to make sure that I got to be so careful here, harvesting these different types of narratives of votings? And what we need to do is just get there, have our eyes everywhere, get law enforcement who care in place everywhere to watch everything. And if these drop boxes keep existing, have someone standing there making sure that not 2,000 drops are getting put into a box, because you got one person that comes up. The most they should have, if it's a husband and wife, but I mean, you should have to hand them in somewhere.
Well, the only way this can be done is midterms are coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And like this month, the middle of the month, elections, magistrate, and so on and so forth is happening here. And the only way this can be done is people get off their butts
right,
and go vote.
And protect the
like
vote.
you said, and protect the vote. Because if you see some shucking and jiving going on, somebody ought to know about it.
Oh yeah, it should be immediately turned in. I mean, look at how many rock star women there were that actually did try to watch out for November 3rd and 4th. You think about that. There was women out there advocating, following people, filming people, but you couldn't produce none of this in the courtroom because that's how deep they penetrated our country. They set us up.
Like, I don't understand why everyone isn't like the state of Kentucky. You've got to show them an ID before you can vote. Driver's license,
Yeah.
Something like that.
Well, you have certain areas have better things in place, and they don't fear the issues of the narrative. So
that's the way it ought to be. It's going to have to be if we're going to get out of this mess we're in.
Exactly. And that's why DeSantis is trying to set examples, Christina Gomez and a few others. But when you really look at it out there, there's not enough coming out of strength to, protect us going into the 2022. And we need it ever so badly in order to do a proper flip for 2024 and to start changing some things and redirecting some agendas of law and getting new legislations and legislators to start working on criterias that destroy the foundations of what they were causing to the American people and beyond into other countries as they are. $33 billion. Let's give it to Ukraine. The Khazarian mafia, you kidding me? $33 billion to a mafia? One of the oldest mafias, mind you, too. This is one of those bloodline trait things, and I'm not joking about this. It's factual. Some of the richest human beings on earth. I know what that man's doing. A lot of people don't think very much of Putin, but I really think that he's the one trying to change the focus and narrative for different purposes of reasons. And I think that Trump's very well aware of what this guy's doing. I really do.
Well, here's the thing, though. He thought he could go in and wham bam, thank you, ma'am, I'll be in and out in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he found out, whoops, I made a mistake. But here's again.
That could be a possibility.
Yeah, he can't. He has to either completely commit himself to go ahead and do this, or he is really going to have egg on his face.
Well, all he has left to do is Ukraine.
Yeah, but he can't seem to get past that.
Well, I don't know if he's... See, here's the thing. The media vaccinates everybody. The mind. The propaganda. Oh, yeah. They're selling the propaganda, the big picture. Well, I don't listen to that, although I listen to it. But I don't let it get absorbed into me. Consciously, I think Putin has not called out his arsenal I think he's waiting for a magic moment. And I don't know what it is, but I can tell you this. A lot of people from Ukraine said it was the own Ukrainian army and militias bombing their own people. I mean, there's some really weird dialogue of information going on through this whole entirety. But I can't say this. It did change a function of direction a little bit. And some people took advantage of where they were busy at, what they were trying to do, who these people in Washington were trying to influence, and some governors got some things slipped through to help us, where they were breaking up the larger Democratic jurisdictions and counties and in cities and so forth, and they put different placements in and made the system more equal or larger for the right side red. So they didn't see it coming. Like DeSantis, his focus was to go after Disney. And while they're trying to defend Disney about how great it was, even though it's a negative everything, when you really look at it up close, the information of what they were putting out into the children's minds on a public...
Have you ever read about Walt Disney?
Oh, yeah, I know a lot about Walt Disney.
Yeah.
I know a lot about it. But what he did, he changed the whole voting mechanism and structure in the counties and so forth, and they never saw it coming. So he let the heat.
No, I mean his beliefs, what he believed in.
Well, okay, he built Atlantis in the middle of his own structure.
Yeah, but
that's one. That's one. I got 100.
How should I say this? You know, we were talking about Crowley.
Yeah, Alistair.
Yeah, they were buds.
They knew each other, and they had. Yeah, I get you. Scientific beliefs and more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it just, you know, just coming down the pike, you know, one thing snowballing after another, you know, and I give DeSantis credit. I think he's got some good things going for him.
I truly back you on that, and I'd still like to see Trump get in. You know, as far as 2024, the fear that I have though is he is 74 years old, and you know, life is yeah, 73, 74, yeah.
Well,
well,
he doesn't look it.
Magic beds, brother.
I guess so.
But,
yeah, he's got the money, doesn't he?
Yeah, but the thing is this. I think we're in a place now where we, the people, need a plan B. Because what if in case, in a month from now or something, you know, he passes away. I'm just saying. I'm not wishing for it, but we need a plan B. We need.
Yeah, we've had other presidents that's happened too, haven't we?
Yes, we have. Yes, we have.
Yeah, they wanted to know about Area 51.
Yeah.
Weeks later, they were dead.
Yeah, lot of mysterious mishaps, which is why I like talking about all this stuff, because it is all deep. It's everything that I had in the title tonight, but I could have made it much worse, but I would have probably never made it on air. All right, so listen, let's get some.
What people need to do, they need to look at some of this stuff and read about it and open their eyes. Wake up, America.
I know, man. I know. And you know what? There's a lot awake, but there's just a lot that's never going to become awake. I think we're truly in that position of fact.
Oh, yeah.
Because people look at the analogy of common sense, and sometimes you have to take that and throw it aside. And you have to say to yourself, I got to believe in the unbelievable. I can make it work a different way. Because if you stay to the narrative where fear lies, they trapped you. You're never going to get out of it. You're never going to help us change. You're never going to make a change for America. You're never going to make a change for the children's futures. And you're going to allow them to keep punishing, coming after, and utilizing and experimenting on you. And remember, Obama just said this most recently. Did we not just test this product on a couple billion people, as he put it? Well, look where that's going to take us into the future. That's all I can say. James, it's been a wonderful time with you tonight. Thank you so much for being here, and everybody who's hung out, stuck around. Please share this to all your favorite groups. Me and James will be back on another date and time. We'll always put that date and time up for you guys to check us out. Remember, this is Studio 10 o'clock talks. This is part of the America Disclosing Uncensored, the Dark Radio Network project. Thank you so much. You guys are wonderful. I'm sorry I didn't read a lot of the comments tonight. When I do the phone thing, direct line, I do it a little bit different on the setup. And I got down here, I set up, I hit live, and then I realized I didn't have my other monitor in front of me. And it was like, So I apologize. I will try to get back and correspond with everybody. James, you too. If you see any comments on it, you can make give any answers or analogies to, please. It's as much your show as mine tonight. Feel free to do whatever you want. B. Moss, all you guys, Ernie, everybody. And if I didn't mention anybody, I apologize. Thanks so much. Don't judge me. We won't judge you. We're just here to research and give you information. Have a great night, everybody. James, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
All right, brother.